Thank you.
All set? Thanks. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's school board meeting. Today is May 18th. Would you all please join me for the pledge? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So, as far as members in attendance, we have everybody. I think Stan and Joel and Josh are with us online. Tim is here, myself. Who's Ellen? I know we have some staff on also. First, I'm going to open up for public participation as always. If somebody calls in with the numbers that are on the screen, they can get a hold of us. Next on our agenda is approval of meeting minutes. We have minutes of May 4th, 2020 public session. Does anyone have any concerns?
Is there a motion to accept? Then you can discuss.
Or is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept as written.
I'll second for discussion. Any discussion, any concerns or changes? Not hearing any. All those in favor to accept as written?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain, Mr. Chairman, as I was not present.
One abstention from Mr.
Yeah,
Shea.
one abstention and
Okay.
4 ayes.
4 ayes.
Next, we have minutes of May 4th, non-public sessions 1 and 2.
Make a motion to accept non-public 1 and 2 as written.
I'll second for discussion. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
One abstention. Josh, are you with us? Can you tell Josh?
Again.
Oh,
Okay,
thanks,
all right.
Josh. Little delay.
We'll get there.
Time we get this figured out, we'll be back to normal business. Okay, that takes care of minutes. Next, we move on to reports. I think we had a treasurer's report. If you want to start there. Does anyone have any questions or concerns with the treasurer report?
I'm all set.
Anything we need to be aware of on that?
Nope.
Looks
Pretty straightforward.
Anyone with any questions or concerns in that report?
No.
Okay, moving along, I think under reports, we have Misty with us.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay.
go ahead.
Am I loud enough?
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. I don't have my headset on, so I just wanted to be sure. On my report, I'll just keep it brief, and if you have questions, you can certainly ask me. But what I tried to focus on in my end of year report is all the virtual learning pieces, since this is what we've really been super focused on in the last few months, obviously, at school. And I just wanted to say that I'm super proud of the staff and all that they have been doing and are still doing right to the end. They have been incredible, and I can see that we have huge potential moving forward. So some of the things that I focus in on is really to share out some videos, some best practices around remote learning, resources, those kinds of pieces. But I really wanted one piece here to sort of jump out at people, because I think we can kind of strike while the iron's hot as we start planning going into the fall to start looking at how do we really leverage our technologies, our staff, what we've learned, and start to get ourselves more leverage into a more blended learning environment, especially as we plan moving forward, depending on which scenario we end up in. If we really leverage ourselves, if we all come back physically, but we leverage ourselves in a blended learning format and structure, it would be easy to move back and forth from fully online to physically here and leveraging those technologies. So I put some resources in there that I hope people look at to see what that means, what that would look like. And after that, I put some things in there, things that we really need structural work we have to do in curriculum in order for us to get into a structural system of blended learning, and then ultimately down the road take on the technologies we really need to be rock stars at this. So that's a really important thing, looking at that piece, making sure that we're going into the fall having really planned structurally what this needs to look like so we can toggle back and forth without feeling so much stress. One thing I think all of us have been talking about and hearing a lot of feedback around is looking at how we can provide a lot more support in development for our parents at home, helping them, finding a way to even train our parents, especially where they may not know a lot about the technologies that we're using currently and might use in the future. So that's another big thing that has come out for me in terms of, we've had to triage a bit to get our staff leverage and our students leverage, but I think we have to look forward at how we can help our parents get more informed and actually have trainings themselves so they feel more confident in what we're doing and can help their kids at home. I won't list all the things in there that I listed, but those are some important pieces. The other piece I think we really have to focus in on is, again, the big part of shifting mindsets about what school is and what we need to do moving forward, especially around the social-emotional learning. When we start doing things like blended and even getting to fully remote, we really have to have some supports in place for those pieces. So that's just one other piece of highlighting. I think even Diana in her last report talked about that. So I'd like us to kind of keep that at the forefront. So I did write out some pieces around curriculum work in my report, and again, I won't go through all that. I'll just allow people to ask me questions. But I put some graphics in there of what the curriculum structure really needs to look like moving forward. So I want to put a plug-in around the amount of time we really need to figure out and embed in our whole structure for teachers to have time to plan and to think and to learn around this, because there's still a lot of learning that we need to do to leverage people and technology and to get our curriculum structure in a really tight place. So those pieces are there. And the other last thing, and this is just a disclaimer, I put a feature of a learning management system in this report, not because I think we should go with this next year. We're not ready for a full-on learning management system yet, but I wanted us to start thinking about the conversation and planning, because some of these systems, which we really do need in our structures of school today, we need to get that kind of system on. And again, we have to leverage, mindsets, we have to leverage curriculum and people before we could bring something like that on. But I wanted us to start looking at what the future could hold, because we really do need to start planning for that now. And, I will say Empower certainly is one of my top favorites. I think it has a lot of potential. I would not suggest we go with whatever I say. I think we would need to have a committee and look at other ones too. But there's a lot of good stuff out there around Empower that you could look at and see what the possibilities are even within that system. But again, even in that piece, I did put in there that we still have two big things we would have to do before we could even think about bringing that on, and that's curriculum and shifting mindsets, because bringing something like that on is a huge structural shift. It's a shift in multiple variables in the system, but we can start preparing ourselves for it if we could see what that future could be. So that's one of the reasons why I put that in there. We still, we have a lot of planning and strategic designing to do to get to that. But I think sometimes it's helpful if we have a visual of what could be, so we know where to back up and backwards plan to get to that. And I will say that if we had a system like that on in a couple of years, we could be rock stars as a system. We could do and leverage things that we can't do and leverage right now. So that's one of the reasons why I featured that, to break away the iron top a little bit, since the setting is fully remote. I think people have learned a lot. And so I think our dialogue could be pretty rich if we start having those conversations and start planning. So, as you can see, my whole team here has been this virtual blended learning team. And again, this is something that I really am very excited about. It's sort of a passion of mine. And I think, we have a lot of people who can see the huge potential we have having experienced all of this. So I'll leave that there for now and just say
Good, good. Any questions?
Just a comment. I mean, I'm glad to see that, Misty. It's a passion of mine. I see the vision. I see it being good for the district, and can't happen soon enough for my liking.
Me neither, but we have to be patient.
I get that. I misread your report. Jumped the gun a little bit. I know where you're at, but I like to see it.
Anyone else with any questions for Misty?
Thank you, Misty.
No, thanks for all that, though. This is great.
All right, great, thanks.
Enjoyed reading it.
Okay, thank you, thanks again, Misty. Moving along into new business, we have a bid section. So we have a roof bid, and tonight we have Jeff with us. If you'd like to come up to the board and introduce yourself, and you provided us with
Yeah, so that way you'll be caught on camera and audio as
Microphone.
well.
Hi. My name is Jeff Greenhalgh. I'm the owner and project manager of Ryan Construction Management. We've been in business since 1984, and our primary focus is working with owners, municipalities, and contractors to develop proposals and try to achieve for any entity the best value for whatever product they're looking for us to pursue. We're a small company. There are just 3 of us in it, and our experience here in town was we were working with with Crew and Construction when they did the public safety building. And the bottom line is I'm a numbers guy. I'm supposed to keep track of the money and make sure you get the best value. So.
And you were, in that capacity, you were contract project management
Yes.
for the project?
Correct. Yep. From scope development, budget development, through the implementation of that, and through the construction process as project manager. Yes.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming in. You've given us a proposal, I mean, because this board has discussed some of the roof bids that were presented to us that were done prior to us getting on the board. And with some of the things that we saw, we basically had asked you to give us a proposal to assist us with potentially rebidding those projects. You had an opportunity to review them, and I think you met with Larry and looked at the roofs. When you looked at the original bid scope, which was, to me, it seemed kind of just geared towards one type of product, and that a manufacturer was recommending, and not potentially, because on some of the roof we have, on Henry Wilson, we have mostly rubber membrane, which I assume is EPDM, or...
It appears to be, yep.
Yeah, and the other system on the high school was EPDM, but some of the repairs have been done with a PVC system.
Right. And this is the one with the ballasted roof.
Yes.
Right, so, my approach would be to take a look at everything that the staff and board have put together for it. Take a look at where I think there might be some opportunities, and put together a draft RFP for people to look at. I tend to think that my focus is generally from the end user's perspective as opposed to the manufacturer's perspective. So you get clear in the proposal exactly what it is you want to accomplish: warranty, access and availability, timeframes, to look at some of the other qualified bidders in the roofing industry that were not participants in the original bid, and to see why, and to see if there's an opportunity to do a better job, and then assist in putting together a bidders list that runs the gamut, not to exclude any of the people that had already bidden, put the time in, but maybe to supplement that. And then assist during the process, to assist Larry and his team and the SAU staff in being available to make sure that everyone's bidding the same thing. And then our procedure has usually been, when the bids are received and reviewed, we generally meet with the two apparent low bidders to make sure that everything is included, so that what you're getting is exactly what you want, and then make a recommendation to the board as to what we would see as probably the best use of funds in that area. So,
And based upon your experience with the cost of these systems, and you looked at our previous bids, do you think it's reasonable to go out for rebid for potential savings for similar quality products with warranty, similar warranty?
similar warranty and product. And the one open item that I have to spend some time looking at is the compatibility with some of the systems that are in place, how we transition, those kind of things, making sure that whatever you decide to do going forward doesn't void any existing warranty, just so we've got to make sure that, and I'm sure in the industry, when you transition from one system to another system, that there's an acceptable industry standard that if you observe, it doesn't affect the existing warranty nor the new warranty that's coming into play. To me, that would be the only caveat that we'd have to make sure we're clear on up front to getting it. Based on the number of roofs that I've been involved with and stuff, candidly, the numbers seem high to me. And I think there's an opportunity for savings. And I think based on that, if we spend a little bit of time up front qualifying what those are and putting together a different, let's say not a different, in my opinion, a clearer RFP with people to bid, I think sometimes the numbers that are in there, when you're not sure about what it is you're bidding on, sometimes the numbers come higher.
I would agree with that. So you've given us a tiered approach and a quoting, which is, I assume that as far as your quote to us, that we can basically take none or any or all.
Yeah, sure.
I think it would be, for us, it would be good for us to get some assistance in this, because I think there might be some substantial savings that we could get to the same quality level, same warranty that was quoted, and potentially save some money for some other needed improvements. Because I think we're a little tight on the existing quote based upon what we had for funds approved.
I do want to make sure that the board is aware that the proposal that we have for Mr. Greenhouse does exceed the amount that would not require a bid in and of itself unless you choose to waive the bid process here.
But
That would have been my first motion.
But in this case, so if we was to say, take it one step at a time with his quote for a pre-bid assistance, say that's what all we look for, that would be in excess of that?
The total bid.
Oh, the total bid,
The
okay.
total bid
Yeah.
exceeds.
Yeah, I think I don't see any reason why we would not take it one step at a time.
That's fine with me.
Because if the board chooses to have Jeff assist us in this, if we were not happy or felt that we were getting the benefit after the first section that we have assistance for, then we may choose to say, we're not going to go with those bids, we're going to go with the previous bid. Or consider those. So for me, I think incrementally would be the best way to go if we were to kind of consider it, because we get an opportunity to see how that RFP comes out, whether it's satisfaction to the board, and then decide if we're going to proceed to the next step, and does that make sense? Certainly, I think that if we put in the effort, that we may certainly go out to bid and have those bids commented on, but I don't think at this point we should go any further than that.
Because the other thing I just wanted to put out for the record, we have a proposal here that includes 3 sections, pre-bid, post-bid, and construction oversight. 2 of those were what was requested from the motion from the last board meeting.
Yeah.
The last section about the construction oversight was not part of that motion. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear for the record.
Yeah, I don't think we're even near that point where we would start retaining services for stuff that we're not even sure we're gonna do. So questions from the board?
I'm good. I think, the construction management services is a benefit to the district. There's a lot of money on the table. There's a strong potential for a small investment to save some significant dollars. I'm willing to do that with the taxpayer's dollar. We can make it clean, and I can make a motion to waive the bidding up to $6,000, or we can take it step at a time, however you want to do it. I think that the intent of the policy in place is that any services over $5,000, there's a bid or a waiver of the bid. I think we're under some time constraints. The plan would be to try to get the roofs done this summer, if I'm not correct.
It would be lovely.
So, I think it makes sense to at least talk about waiving a bid. We can still contract those services one step at a time, but it's one less administrative thing we have to do down the line.
Well, if we were to consider say we just go consider the pre-bid scope of work, which he's detailed here, and then we were to
Then you-
consider the post-bid.
Then you would do a motion just to.
Yeah, just-
to accept the pre-bid at
Yeah.
that price.
Yeah.
And that would be.
wouldn't require a waiver.
That doesn't require a waiver. Anywhere you go, you're gonna have to do a motion.
Right.
But it's whether or not you are moving to set aside that policy for this, or if you're only going to, right now, contract for that scope of the work, then that would be the motion that would include either just the pre-bid or just the pre- and post-bid.
So I'll make a motion that we contract for the pre-bid services as defined in the document submitted by Mr. Greenhall at a cost of $2,550.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Josh. Discussion? I'll give some discussion. I think it's a good opportunity for us to get some additional resources that may or may not give us some more opportunities to be better with the taxpayers' dollars. I mean, the total budget for this is what, $744,000 or something like that.
Not quite that high.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but it's a lot of money. And anytime we can save that money and put to some other things that we desperately need. I mean, we've been talking about boilers, we've been talking about ventilation systems, security upgrades at the front of the school, which I think
Well, yeah,
that's going to be another area that will...
some can and can't come out of the same CRF, but yes.
Right, but there's some areas that we're going to be looking to be as fiscally responsible as possible. So, any other discussion on the motion?
Mr. King, if I can ask a question, it's
Go ahead.
Antonito.
Go ahead, Diana.
I'm just wondering, I apologize, it's a little hard to hear sometimes. I'm just wondering how this dovetails with the performance contract? Does it replace the performance contract?
No, this is not tied to that. This is just specifically for the roof bids, that we had a bid that was done last year that got put forth to the board. So this is really only regarding the replacement and repair of the roofs. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
And you had mentioned too that perhaps you would go back with your original bids because you had said you weren't going to go with those bids. I did contact the bidders to say that you were not going to go with those bids.
Right,
So,
right.
okay.
But if, say if it comes to, say at the end, that the quotes are similar, and we says, okay, do we, or higher, I mean, I assume that in this bidding process, that when it goes out to bid, that those people that bid will be on the same list.
Right.
So if those bidders should be on that list, so that they have an opportunity to bid this scope of work, whatever the differences may be, So they have an opportunity to submit the same bid and same proposal, or it may be different based upon how the RFP is written. And because there might be differences. He might suggest doing it differently, working with Larry from some things, doing this, taking some things out, putting some things in. You've got, I don't know, it could be simple as, the material, say the balancing materials are removed by a separate subcontractor, for instance. You may choose it, that makes more sense, I don't know.
You want to get on the roof with a shovel?
Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. I'm voting no.
Okay, stands opposed, so motion passes. So, you're all set, Jeff, to work with Larry and Ruth Ellen, and let's see what we can come up with as far as a bid spec, based upon what we would need to do, and then I'm sure that'll be back before us, and with some thoughts from staff on whether or not we would go to the next step.
Sure. Very good. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thanks for coming in. Moving along, next we have telephone district. Telephones in the district. The board voted to go out to bid on 3/2/2020. We have all that stuff in our
There's
packet.
a very large amount of material in your packet.
Yep.
I did place in there at the last, I believe, and if not, I will make sure that that's there.
The scoring.
There's scoring, but there's also, I gave you a summary sheet that gives the,
That's in there.
the recommendation sheet, so that.
I didn't see a I saw the summary, but I didn't see an actual recommendation.
Okay, I did do, let me make sure that that's.
I didn't see it either.
Okay,
4 documents?
let me get there. 1, 2, 3, 4. And.
Unless it's in one of those. Thought I reviewed them all.
let's see, you know
There's
what?
one that's circled.
If you hit refresh, it's there now.
Aha. So it was, there was hiding?
And it just popped up.
So, and I'll let Jen speak to this as you get into questions, but what I've done with this was try to just encapsulate an awful lot of information. We had 4 bidders.
That's the rubric that we saw.
It says
Oh,
phone
okay.
bid, yeah, it says phone bid recommendation on it. There are 4 bidders. They weren't completely apples to apples all the way across. The 2 that are lowest, and I've given you cost totals down at the bottom and then priced it out on the 3-year total, because that's where it really starts to show the difference. Did you find it?
No.
No.
I think that's the same
It
as,
says phone bid recommendation.
I think that's the
Dot,
same
dot.
thing that Jen put together with the recommendation circled as the lower rubric, is that correct?
It's not the rubric sheet. It's a memo in Word.
Okay, because what you just put up on the portal that I saw was a phone bid scoring rubric.
Summary?
Phone bid recommendation that I'm looking
I didn't
at.
see that, I'm looking at a chart.
Okay.
I see a phone bid,
there's-
2,000. I
Would
see
you
it.
like me to share out a copy for them real quickly so it shows up in that email?
We can do that too, or if they just hit refresh, it'll be there either way.
I've got the recommendation now, it's just
Okay.
refreshed.
Okay, if you hit refresh, it should be there.
Refresh. Okay, I guess I'm being technically challenged. There's a refresh button.
It's the little
And we've gone back and out of it.
refresh is
Phone bid.
when you're up here, if you hit that, that refreshes.
Oh, yeah, okay. There we go.
Okay.
Look at that.
So, as you look at the 4, it's really in year 2 that you start to see the difference, and year 3, I've done the total there for what it would cost us out over 3 years for each of these systems. And the one that we're recommending that we go with, the amount of savings becomes pretty clear. Year 1 is a little bit more upfront, but once we get into year 2 and beyond, it drops significantly. And it's our cost to maintain that drops. It's non-proprietary equipment, it's an open source PBX, which means that if we chose to switch to another company, we would be able to do so with that equipment. The other equipment that we're looking at is proprietary equipment. So it gives us the most options at the lowest cost once we hit year 2.
What's their physical company location?
Let me, I would have to look in the, let me see here.
I'm looking it up right now.
Okay, see who gets it first.
I believe it's Bedford, but I'm just double checking.
Is that a regional, like headquarters, where they do any, or that's just,
We have spoken with other schools
Yeah.
who've used the system.
because that was recommended by Newmarket, was that?
I believe so, yep.
Interlakes
And
and
Interlakes.
Newmarket are both 2 districts that use them currently.
And how long have they been using this provider, Jen?
Interlakes has been using it for a number of years now. Newmarket just told me he's been working, I didn't ask how many years he's been working with it.
It
I
says
contacted
completed
both. He
August
said-
2014, so they've had it for 6 years now, for Newmarket.
Oh, good.
Okay, perfect.
And they still recommend them?
And they do.
Oh, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I actually called to ask directly what they thought, because it was a different way of working with telephony for me, so I asked them specifically a lot of questions. I don't know if it helps to have a little background on what we're at now. Right now, we sit where we have proprietary software, different proprietary-based programs in each of the 3 buildings. In one building, we have 3 different types of telephony in one building alone at the middle school. And what I run into is the proprietary-based software programs. Sometimes after a while, you have to be certified, you have to be a certified vendor to be able to actually access and use the software. So if that company goes out, or that software, you can't find anyone to work on it anymore. In 2 of the buildings, I'm lucky I have someone who will come out of retirement, Clayton Randall, will help us. In the 3rd building at Valley View, I have contacted no less than 7 telecommunications companies and reached out to all my peers in the state. And it's very hard to find someone who will work with a simplex-based Watson system. So at one point, many years ago, they started moving over to voice over IP, starting at the SAU office in the middle school. And realizing what had started back in 2013, I decided to then move forward so all buildings could have voice over IP, because when I came here, the elementary school didn't even have an answering machine. There was no way to leave a message at the elementary school at the time. So if we had gone remote back then, there would be no way to leave messages at the elementary. At the high school, they had a blown voice card on an old comm dial system, so they had a store answering machine in the main office, and that was it. So this year, I started moving voice over IP into each main office of every building, because in the past, if you called the wrong school looking for an office, you had to hang up and call the other building. Now, I have moved voice over IP network-based telecommunications into every main office of every building, so if you call one, they can forward you to the other buildings.
And that's still a relative novelty for us. We haven't been able to do that for too long. I think as we look at it, we have a couple of major issues why we need to move forward with this. We are not fully 911 compliant. We need to be. And right now, I do not have the ability for messages to be left for individual classroom teachers, or for classroom teachers to be able to call out from their classrooms if they need to make parent contact during their prep period. So then that means they're either reduced to using their own personal cell phones or waiting in line for a phone down in the teacher's lounge, which is not a good idea. So We looked at this, we looked at going with a single provider. We went back, looked to see what else we could come up with that might be a better and more comprehensive system. And I think the solution that we have makes an awful lot of sense for us. We are able to do the upfront costs this year, and then it will result in fairly significant savings moving forward with what we would have for our yearly cost.
Okay, so first question would be, where is the upfront cost? Which, like, say if we look at the recommendation one, total cost first year is $34,000.
Right.
Where is that coming from, and it hasn't been budgeted?
The upfront cost was not budgeted per se in a telephone line, but we have unexpended funds at this point in the year that we would be able to cover that this year. Next year, I can't.
Right. Now, is there any capital reserve accounts that, just for technology or this type of equipment?
Not specifically for this equipment, and frankly, we would be better to use what we have now. The technology that we have, the technology fund is specifically for
Right.
hardware, which I can't go there. And there is not enough in the school equipment fund because we've tapped that for the sound systems in both buildings. But this would be able to be covered from unexpended funds this year.
Tim?
Looking at the schematics and the pricing, TNT, which is your recommendation,
TSC.
is it TSC?
Yeah.
Okay, there's an upfront equipment cost of $27,399. Does that mean that we own that equipment?
Yes.
Okay. Versus, I'm looking at Atlantic Broadband, there's an upfront cost, but it doesn't look like we own that equipment. It looks like it's their problem if we have a problem with the hardware. I'm seeing that correctly. So,
but on the equipment, in that proposal, let me pull that one up. For TSC, I believe it was, how many phones is in that? Because the unit cost was like $100.
It's the same number of pieces that we're looking at across the
Right.
district.
But it's not like it's, it's quite a few phones for what we need.
It is.
So they're a cost of $100 a piece. So if we have an issue with hardware and it's $100 here and $100 there, it's not like it's a $27,000 black box.
Correct.
It's-
That is correct.
And, I mean, that hardware has, a certain lifespan that's gonna last. Whether it's, you might end up replacing those, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. I don't know what would be the
Well, I don't
lifespan of that
know.
type of telephone. I mean,
What we've had at the high school has been a long time.
yeah, so I know I saw it in their proposal, that it was a substantial amount of phones. Was it one for every room? No.
it's 120,
Yes, I planned it out on the map, one for every room and office space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we don't currently have that now?
We do not.
No.
Okay. So if somebody's trying to get a hold of a teacher inside a classroom, how is that done?
Depending on the building, if you call the high school, for example, you have to call the main office. Then the main office has to go to the PA system, and they have to call over the ceiling to that teacher in the classroom, no privacy, on a separate system. Within the elementary, they call into the main office, and the main office can forward a line into a wall handset but they can't call back out. And at the middle school, yeah. At the middle school, some classrooms can call, and some classrooms, same thing, PA system.
So Ruth Ellen, when you talked about the savings and years after year 2 forward, what typically would that be?
Because if you look at the yearly cost
What's
for
an estimate on
for
that?
TSC, the yearly cost is $6,800 moving forward.
What would be the estimated saving from years
what
2
we
on?
have.
What we're paying for
What-
now?
What we're paying we've budgeted now, what we have been paying is roughly $40,000 a year. For a system that doesn't cover half
Right.
of what we need.
And right now, I have to pay multiple vendors for upkeep because First Light is just for the lines, but they don't do repair if I need to work on the systems themselves. I have to call someone else for each of them.
So years 2 going forward, we're going to be saving over $30,000?
Yes, we're going to save the cost of that equipment in year 1.
So if we budgeted 40,000, then why couldn't the cost for year 1 come out of that and the excess come out of undesignated funds? Or why
We've
wouldn't
already
it?
spent that.
What?
We've already spent that on the funds we have now
No, I mean,
for next year.
In next year,
yeah,
I mean,
if we've already budgeted it.
it's not to say that it couldn't. We need to get it up and rolling,
I understand that, yeah.
and
Oh, I
we
see.
know next year is going to be pretty tight.
I see. So if we put it in next year, we'd have to wait till next year. You're recommending doing it this year.
Yep.
So next year, we've budgeted 40, we're gonna spend, say, 7
Yeah,
plus, and there's gonna be a savings there.
there will
on
be a
that budget
savings
line.
there.
How did the,
That could then go to what we need done with connections and with intercoms and whatnot. There are some other pieces that aren't necessarily just the telephony here, but
So there's other
That's-
things that need to be done in addition to this.
yes, but this is the foundation piece that has to happen first.
how did the specs on this system go out? Was it give us a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, or was it a 3-year contract? How was it presented to these companies?
You have the entire bid package in your folder, and you have what came back from them. It was presented that here's what we need. Some gave a 1-year and a 5-year pricing. Some gave 3-year pricing. That part wasn't specified. It was, we need this. What will it cost us to have this equipment to do this? And what's the cost moving forward for that on an annual basis?
Okay, so playing devil's advocate, looking at the scoring sheet. A 1-year total cost with Atlantic Broadband is $24,149.76. A 1-year cost with your recommended vendor is $34,203. Why couldn't we consider awarding it to Atlantic Broadband, letting them know that if they want year 2 and 3, that they're going to have to do better in their pricing in year 2 and 3?
I believe that's priced on a 3-year contract, that bid.
I'm
It
seeing
is.
total cost 1 year, $24,149.76.
Atlantic Broadband is a 3 or a 5-year pricing.
Would that be the same price all 3 years?
So I have a question on the TSC proposal, where they've got a 3-year and a 5-year recommended cost, which is a substantial savings to go with a 5-year
And that was,
under TSC.
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like the annual cost is $6,800 versus $10,000, and other costs, is $500 versus $800. What is our ability to get out of that contract if they don't perform? Has that been addressed?
All of these had in the bid specs that there is not only a performance bond, but there is the non-appropriations clause.
Okay.
That was included in the bid. That's standard in our bid template.
Okay.
Yes, directly in the bid.
I mean, granted, they've got with some recommendations from other school districts that have had them basically for over 3 to 5 years, so at least we have some comfort in that. Because typically, back when the town once used Bayring, we had...
Which is now First Light.
Yeah, which we had issues with it.
Yeah.
Maybe that was the time of the era, but it was problematic, and I think they migrated away from it.
Yeah, Bayring and G4 are now First Light.
First Light. That is the highest cost in this.
Yes, it is.
Yes. They're who we're currently using now.
Oh,
That's how we have the amount for the budget, because that's who we use now.
yeah.
They had, I believe, we found they had the use back, E-rate contract from years. That's originally we went with them for.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know when, 2016 or I'm not sure when.
I believe it was even before then.
So does anyone else have any questions for Jen or Ruth Ellen?
I just got a comment.
Go ahead.
Two things that I've seen with Atlantic Broadband, and I want to be clear that the name in the proposal is the same last name as mine, no relation, I don't know the gentleman. When we went into remote learning, Atlantic Broadband stepped forward and said, hey, we're going to provide internet students to your students at this price or free. When we had problems with our television broadcasting equipment, it was a long time getting figured out. Atlantic Broadband, local company, local repair, went crawling through the roofs to find the human rat cut cable. I think there's value in using a local vendor. And I'm looking at the bid specs, and we're not clear to these companies on what we're looking for in a time period. So yeah, they're coming back with a 3-year proposal, but I'm not seeing that in our actual bid that says, give us pricing for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and that could make a difference, because as a local company, at least the way my wife runs her business, they're going to go out of the way to work with local people, and I just...
Well, they've given us a 3 or a 5.
And I hear that, Tim, but when I look at the numbers, even if you take out the first year cost, you look at the cost going forward, which is a reoccurring cost. The reoccurring cost is there almost 4 times the reoccurring cost. So even if we were to go back to them and say, hey, you guys got to sharpen the pencil, I don't imagine they're going to come back and say, oh, yeah, okay, so we're going to give it to you for 24 cents on the dollar from what we originally quoted. I don't think that it might look attractive in the first year, but once you roll it out past 2 years, they quickly go back. In fact, they have the second highest reoccurring cost out of all the people that bid. The only other one that's close is Telnetic. Telnetic, and they're similar. They quoted us, I don't know if they quoted 5 years. Is that their 5-year price? Okay, so
Theirs was either a 1 or a 5.
1 or a 5. So to me, I don't think broadband has brought something sharp enough to the table for me to consider it.
I would like to add one thing. I came into this originally with Atlantic Broadband being my first, because I have worked with them a lot. And so originally they were my first. And I was very surprised when this other option came in. In fact, I called those 2 school districts because I couldn't believe it. I said, this can't be right. And they said, no, it's true then, and it works really well. I've worked a lot with Atlantic Broadband, so I know exactly what Tim is talking about. But then when I saw this other option, it's also open source. So it's not proprietary. We can move on, and if we say, you know what, geez, this did not work out, and we do want to move to maybe Atlantic Broadband, we can. It was a very different way of thinking for me, because I was used to the structure that First Light and Atlantic Broadband have a very similar structure, but their costs are very different, as you can see. So I was very comfortable with the structure that Atlantic Broadband had laid out. I know exactly what to do. I even laid out the groundwork for it in the network. So this is very different different for me. But when I called the districts and I talked to them, it was very surprising. They said, no, you're really going to like it. You won't believe you're able to scale. You can add some more lines if you want to. You can assign different numbers, change them out yourself, and you have control. And it surprised me, I have to admit. But I absolutely know it's in this book.
So Jen, where do those numbers go once we change companies? Do we own those numbers? Can we transfer them over to another company, or do we lose those numbers and start all over again?
No. We can claim the numbers we have, and that's one thing that'll be part of this. You'll see in the proposal that they'll claim our numbers for us. But B, what happens is that thing called the PBX, that's where we actually assign numbers, is the PBX that we'll have, which is open source. We get to assign numbers ourselves, specific lines and so forth. And the same thing is, you know how it is right now with vendors. You can now contact the vendor and say, I want you to claim my current numbers if I come over to you. That's one of the first things I negotiate. I want to keep this number. Because we have numbers that have long been associated with our contact information, so it's one of the first things I request. You might have one maybe, but I really prefer to try to keep numbers when I can.
Any other questions? I think it's been, I think there's some good, decent proposals, and I would agree that I think that's, their recommendation is probably the best way to go. Stan or Josh or Joel, any thoughts or comments?
No, I like CSC.
I love that.
I do too.
Okay, I'll make a motion to award or go with the TSC proposal as far as our phone system, as proposed in a 5-year contract.
I'm seeing 3 on here.
I'll second.
Well, yeah,
I priced it out at what it would be at 3 years.
no,
Jen, that.
no,
CSC is-
your pricing is for 5 years. As far as the numbers you have for the annual
Right,
renewal.
yes, yeah.
That's a
I just-
5-year price.
I just did a 3-year total for comparison across the
But the
bottom.
prices she's using
Is the 5 years.
is the 5-year pricing. Because that's why I made the motion for 5 years, because it's substantially different, like
It's cheaper, yes it is.
$4,000 a year. So is there a second?
I did second.
Oh, okay, thanks, Dan. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
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 I'm going to vote no.
Tim's opposed. Josh? Did Josh say something?
Aye.
Oh, thanks, Josh.
4 to
We
1.
got 2 mute buttons, sir.
I can't help you on that side, you're gonna have to figure it out. I have trouble with my own buttons over here.
No.
Refraining from comment.
So we're all set with that.
All set with that. Thank you.
So we're gonna
So
get them this year.
award it to TSC, get that in. We'll get it going for this year, and contract is now, hopefully we can get them in before July, but even if we can't, if the contract
Right,
is signed
yeah.
out.
So you think that to be doing something we're working on in the summer to get them in place?
As soon as they can get in here. It's possible they might even be able to get in before the end of June, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, as long as we get
Depends
it
on what they have going on right
up and
now.
running for next year.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely want it running for next year. Because that way too, it will give teachers the ability to potentially forward calls too. So if we were to have to go remote, they could be contacted and it could go to them
So
as well.
did I understand the bid correctly that not only are you doing the phone system, but within this phone contract, you want that phone system to tie into the existing PA system?
There are pieces of that, yes, so that you can pick up a phone and call lockdown. Done.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's within these specs?
That is within these specs.
Okay.
And that's gonna be included at this price, or we got have additional funds to accomplish that. Jen?
Okay, each of the 3 buildings sadly has a different PA system. So every room that has a phone, including the gym, every single room that has a phone, that phone will turn into a PA. But for instance, outdoor speakers for 2 of the buildings are very different, and that might take an additional, maybe small adapter to send it over to the outdoor speakers. For the middle school, it's going to be almost seamless because their PA system integrates very easily with Voice of Reading Network. It's just one quick adapter that's included.
So the other 2 buildings, we will need to do the adapters for the outside,
Right.
but it will cover the inside.
But that shouldn't be a significant cost.
It won't be this, no.
Well,
It should easily be able to be done with, and not take all of the savings that we will have for next year.
Well,
to be able to get
yeah, I don't think that
accomplished.
tie-in is going to be $30,000.
Yeah, no, it's not going to be.
I'm sure it's going to be. Okay,
Okay.
so I guess, can you let us know when that's going to get done? Whenever you find out.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
So one more question.
And we are looking at doing a technology kind of overview at our next meeting as well, so.
As we're doing these phone systems, September, if we do get into a blended occupancy, remote versus whatever, is this phone system part of that remote learning communications? And if it
Yes,
is, are we documenting
absolutely.
that $30,000 cost as a potential FEMA expense?
I can at least do the 27,399.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Now, I won't be able to put it under FEMA. It could potentially go under the ESSER funds. There's been a very sharp line of demarcation as far as what I'm allowed to put under FEMA and what I'm allowed to put there. But somewhere, the answer would be yes.
Okay. At some point in time, when you have the criteria for reimbursement, can you send that out or put it up on the portal just so we can see it?
I have right now generalities. They haven't given me anything in writing.
When it comes
but yeah.
formalized, I don't want
Yeah.
the rumors.
Me either.
I want the money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Jen. Next, we have under performance contract and financial bids. I'll turn it over to Ruth Ellen. There was a bunch of additional information that they didn't get to us in time for our last meeting, but it was there. But go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
So what I've sent, there was one proposal that came with a bid for the financial piece. One of the pieces that Tom Seekins did pass on to us, and I included that for you, is that as they're looking for the tax exempt lease purchase, they're looking at longevity of employees in the administrative positions, particularly business manager and superintendent. That turnover has a negative effect, and it can also affect our bids. So just letting you know that. I mean, as we're in the process of looking for a new business administrator, but we do have a bid. You also have in your packet a letter of recommendation from Oyster River Superintendent, briefly outlining his experience with Siemens. So the materials that were there were part of what you had asked for on the boiler changes. There's also information there on the
Now, the boiler changes were in their updated proposal question.
They are-
Asked.
I believe they're in this one. That's
Scope of
facilities
questions.
review. And this, we had asked for defining commissioning.
Yep.
The building envelope. And then I'd asked for information on the boiler options, and I believe those are on page 4 or 5. High school measures including boiler options. It's a chart that looks like this.
Okay. I did read that proposal.
Okay.
So,
And then it goes through and includes some more of that. There is a single bid for the finances, and then there was another on, you had asked for specs on the lighting.
Yep.
And that's also included there.
so yeah, they discussed the warranty on the lighting, which is manufacturer's warranty. So they did answer thoroughly all our questions. I guess I'm trying to find the furnace discussion because it doesn't stick into my head. What was there?
I think that was. Okay. Yeah, I didn't grab a colored copy.
No, that's fine. Because in the proposal, they had one boiler replacement LP gas condition.
So this is if you replace two, if you replace one, you've
Oh,
got
I see.
the different options there.
Okay.
And then any associated rebates, the projected cost, and any savings that would be, the one oil-fired boiler with the same, there's no estimated yearly savings, the projected cost is included, there's no rebate. That's the last line there.
So going down through this, as far as the energy savings, 2 boilers, 1 boiler, really, as part of the original proposal that basically this was going to pay for itself through the energy savings. The energy savings is really only the one that only pays for itself is the lighting. Now, granted, the boilers do need to be updated, but as far as basically being paid for by the savings, I think the only one that could actually make that.
As far as one-to-one, yes.
Yeah, building envelope is one of them. The
You've got-
lighting is another one.
There's some yearly savings on the boilers, but it's not going to do all of it by any stretch.
Right, you get the unit ventilators, which is a substantial savings. You've got, percentage of what the total project cost is. But they didn't really add any additional content I saw regarding gas versus oil.
Well,
far as
they'd
Kenya's proposal.
already given us what it
Right.
would be if we did the LP boilers, if you do 2 of them. If you do just one with LP, it would be that difference, would be the $5,122 would be the savings. The total project cost would be $187,692 and a $10,000 rebate. If you look at replacing one oil-fired boiler with the same, there was no estimated savings. It is a lower project cost to replace it, and
okay,
also no
I see that.
rebate. Mr. Gordon, did you want a copy to look at?
Sure.
I have it electronically, so. Just give you the whole.
So the replacement of oil fire, say similar replacement in kind, would be $90,000 versus the going to LP gases is $187,000.
Correct.
And the savings would be $5,000 per year, which in the life of the unit, say if it's 25 years, it'd be, or 20 years would be,
20 years would be
100,000.
100,000.
yeah. And does that 187, does that include the cost to install the tanks and all the other?
I believe that's the boiler system, but
Right.
the tanks,
Because I think
and
that
I
was a
think
separate.
that's part of where you have some of the lower cost with changing out the oil-fired boiler, because tanks and the ventilation is in place for that. You would have those changes that would be involved in the other system.
Question?
Jim?
Oh, can I ask a question,
Go
Larry?
ahead.
Larry, looking at the list of the $2 million in projects, can you tell me if there's anything on that list that's an absolute, we gotta get done now?
Probably the biggest thing in this building would be the unit ventilators. If, after talking with Kevin Christensen to get some clarification on what Charlie had asked before about replacement of them is, if they replace just the bottom, it would be the whole unit that are replaced.
Yeah.
And they would be digitally controlled. They would have the CO2 units and stuff that would control more of the temperature in the rooms and stuff. That would be one of the bigger items that would help, especially with the air quality and the heating in the rooms.
Okay. Any other problems within the district other than that being a priority here?
Probably trying to do something with the rooftop units for the ventilation at the middle school, where we only have basically the 4 HVAC unit, which just supply air to the rooms. The way they were hooked up, everything that we've discovered is the only exhaust ventilation is through the old exhaust that's in the wall ducts. So in some rooms you have one grate at the bottom of the floor, and it's not in every room. So there is no exhaust per se coming from every room. So that would be something that I think should be
And
looked
that's
at.
at Henry Wilson?
That's at Henry, that's at the middle school.
So, looking at that scope of work,
Yeah, there wasn't much included on that.
yeah, I don't see a specific list for that.
No, that's kind of on my wish list.
Where does,
Sorry, Larry, I'm having a request for you to talk a little louder.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry.
where does the boiler for this building fall on that list? Because I know it's been talked about as end of life, but, you know, we've had some pretty good hospice going on. So where are we?
We've had some issues with some of the control units on the burner itself, but, we haven't had any major catastrophes with them yet.
So it's electronics on it, not physical, the functioning parts.
Yeah.
But that,
The biggest problem in this school is the pneumatics.
yeah. And that, one of their items here is the pneumatic to DC, direct
Yeah.
digital control. Is that required for them to do the unit ventilators?
Basically, if they did the new unit ventilators, they would be DDC controlled, yes. Which, that would be one of the saving graces here. Because like I say, with the pneumatics now, when you have an air leak, if it's between point A in the boiler room and point B in, let's say, room 208, then room 208 is just going to go to full heat. So you're going to have 100% heat anytime. And if we lose the compressor, which we have lost in the past, I think it was now 4 years ago, we put a new $12,000 compressor in to run this because we had lost one. Basically, if the compressor goes down, this whole building just opens completely.
Compressor to run it.
It's it's 2-motor compressor now. It basically runs 24/7. If it,
So is it a rotary screw
no,
design?
no,
No,
it's
piston style.
it's piston,
It is?
yes.
You don't know what the
I forget what the manufacturer
CSI
is.
rating is on it?
No, I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. We have, It was put in, has 2 alternating motors to extend the life on it, so, but it basically, anytime you go out, it's running within every 15 to 20 minutes. If it drops down below, the top rating is to keep the air pressure at 80 pounds. If it drops down to 60, then the compressor starts up and runs until it charges again. So it's running, it'll run about 10 minutes each time, each cycle.
Yeah.
Do you have any ballpark idea on fixing the ventilation aspect of the system, what that would cost? Ballpark?
No.
Okay.
From this estimate?
Well, I mean, from this, it does give.
With the unit, if we did all the unit, they broke it down, and the one thing that Kevin did tell me is, what he wanted to explain was on the chart, when we said that the DDC part at the top of, if we only did the bottom unit ventilators,
Yeah.
basically that was broken down. It wouldn't be the total savings that it showed there, because you would still have the upstairs running on pneumatics, so there wouldn't be, it would be like half the savings that are listed.
Well, it has a line item, he has, so it's, you got pneumatic, if you go to that page, Larry, it's page, I don't know, towards the back. You see a chart,
Yeah.
talks about Farmington High School measures.
Yep.
So the one down there says pneumatic to DDC, it's 309,000. Is that, so that, to get rid of the air system, that would be the cost. And then to update all the unit ventilators,
You've got lower, on this one I have is just listed as lower level univator replacement.
13.
Savings would be 1843, project cost would be 233,200.
so you get the upper level unit, which is 19, and 13 lower level. That's $500,000. And then if you convert them to DDC, do you have to? I mean, that's another.
I mean, that would, to get the full benefit of them, yeah, because that would be with the new unit ventilators that would have the CO2 controls and the room adjustment controls, and being able to adjust them without having to go in and change the thermostat or the pneumatic controls line. The pneumatic controls that are on the ventilators now that are basically obsolete parts.
If those go down, you have a very hard time getting parts now, don't you?
Yeah, when we get the control, the actuator or something, basically it's try to find a replacement, which they're having a hard time, or try to find somebody to rebuild one, which hasn't been very successful.
I mean, of this proposal, which is, what was, let me go back.
Well, if you look at the entire thing, it's 2 million plus, but I don't think we were looking to do everything up front.
Right, but in that proposal, I guess, of that, I assume this list of, maybe this, not everything is in that list from the high school?
This proposal that I have, this must be the new one, because I don't have
Okay.
the whole thing listed. I just have
Right.
on this one, lower level unit ventilator replacement for 13 of them.
Right, it doesn't have the uppers.
It doesn't have the uppers, and
Okay.
it doesn't have the DDC controls.
So it doesn't have, yeah.
Do you want me to go back to the other document and see if I can find it?
No, it's just that if you go up in that page, you'll see the list of those items. It's the next 2 pages up. It has the detail, the entire list for the high school, where it has the upper and lower, and
Okay.
it's in there. So in this,
All right, yeah, I've got it here.
so that's why No, the lower and upper level, the lower level, 13 units are on this floor.
Correct.
And
First
there's
floor,
19 on
on
the
the second floor.
Because
There's less on the
down
first
here
floor because you have the gym and,
And the cafeteria.
Cafeteria.
You have fewer classrooms down here. Upstairs, you have more, because this space, you've got
Right.
that, but you don't have, you're not broken up into classrooms with additionals in.
So why was one put in and one not? I guess a question for Larry.
I believe it was just
They,
broke it up to see if you wanted to do it in stages.
Okay.
yeah,
For cost?
they were
Yeah.
sensing we weren't gonna go for the whole shooting match.
Yeah.
Good sense. I mean, 'cause if you just look at the scope of work with this building, there's, between the pneumatic system being converted, the ventilators being updated, and any other stuff it's well over $1 million just for this building. And they've got some of it in this proposal, but slated that if you take this approach, then you're going to be doing the next ones. Because if you change the lower units, you're gonna have to replace this ones
At some point.
at some point. And that is also gonna force your hand to go to changing out the pneumatic system and.
I think we're already there.
Yeah, I believe on that top line, because they have the one line that is EMS pneumatic to DDC for 309,000. I believe that would be the total school, everything changed over, where then they have the DCV for unit ventilators, DDC only is 17,982.
Right, so that doesn't include, that's just the 13 and doesn't have the,
Right.
doesn't change it to digital.
It'll change just those ones to just whichever ones it did to digital. Because I did ask, it can be a combination.
So so this $17,000 line item,
That would be to change the controls
existing
in the...
units?
No, that would be replacing the new units, and that would be the cost to go to the DDC controls on them.
So you've got, the one up above is for the units, and the 17,000 is to put the digital
For
controls on.
the digital control, but you would still have to include somewhere in there the DeSigo software for it too.
Right, and the software runs
Is,
around 70,000.
yeah,
that's what their quote said, yes. But most of that cost was based upon them building.
but that would, the
It's building out
DeSigo...
the design piece.
The
yeah.
DeSigo system would be controlling all three schools. It would replace the Insight system that's now obsolete.
Is there anything that we have to move quickly on between now and, say, September?
No, because I don't see them being able to start before. And anyway, but...
I would say that the one thing that you would probably need to
Needs-
move quickly on is
is
if you're
to-
going to do it this way,
is to get the
financing.
rates locked in. If you,
Yeah, I don't, that's not a driving concern. I think that's a competitive rate, but I don't think if that's going to be substantially different in the future. I mean, if you're talking one, might be a point and a half. I mean, we're moving forward. Where do we think we're going to be in September? We're coming back to full time. I mean, are we even in a position to
don't know.
know what the
We don't know.
occupancy of this building is going to be?
We don't know. And that's part of what's in my report, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Here's my concern, and I don't want to be negative. But we went to the taxpayers last year and we said, do you authorize the school board to enter into a performance contract? on that warrant article, there was no tax impact. Now we're looking at $2 million in projects that I'm going to guess, because I, as a taxpayer, had no clue it was going to be $2 million. And I'm afraid to make that decision without selling it to the taxpayers. I realize our buildings are an investment. I realize we have to maintain them, and I want to make sure that we get good maintenance. My question in September is, we brought in a construction manager tonight. We gave him a test. I want to see how he does. I'm over my head with the furnaces, the ventilation systems. I don't have that expertise where I can speak for the taxpayer and say, yeah, that's a good deal. I've looked at some numbers that have kind of raised question in my mind, and I'm not there. I'd like to table it till September to see where we do on the roof projects, what we have for money left over, potentially what we can reallocate to some of these projects that we have to get done. And before we spend, I'll say $1 million, me personally, I'd rather go back to the taxpayers, because if we don't, I think we're going to get our heads handed to us.
Let me remind you, too, that part of this is not bonding $1 million. It's looking at where we're going to see savings and using that savings to, plus what we are, using that savings that we're not putting toward the energy costs to help pay for the costs. Now, if we're doing the pieces that don't have the major energy cost savings, yep, there's going to be some costs to the district, absolutely. And so that's where we do need to look at it carefully. I will say that if we wait, and certainly we can, that these numbers are not likely to remain static into September. And I can't speak for Siemens or another company to say how many times they will go out to do this for us at the no cost that we have currently.
So let me,
Well, I wanted my comment to both of you. I mean, it was put forth to the voters with, it was going to be paid for by cost savings. So when you look at it, there's some of this that is substantial cost savings that can pay the cost or the bulk of the cost. There's a bunch of this that is going to be added on to an annual budget cycle to pay the note. So in essence, because we were approved by the taxpayers to do it, there was no dollar values to say, oh, by the way, that this is going to be paid for by the savings where it can be, but it may be several $1 million that has to be paid through general taxation. It's going to show up in a budget line item. And yes, they're not bonding and voting on it, but it is a substantial cost that the whatever decision we make, the taxpayer will have to pay. And it's a concern for me because it's, you know, some of this the savings doesn't pay for it. Now granted, we still need to fix, the boilers need to be replaced, the air ventilation system needs to be replaced, the building needs to be tightened up because it's not tight enough. All these things that they flag need to get done. Whether, at what pace they get done, and to what extent, that's where I struggle with. And are we in a position to say, yeah, let's go borrow $2 million that we're going to pay back over 17 years, and some of that cost, I think in this proposal it was, I don't have the chart right in front of me of how it pays out, but after the first couple of years, it gets added to our operating costs.
They were looking at the $40,000 in savings remain in the operating costs, and so that is where your payments are coming out of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, so you get basically,
So you don't reduce your operating cost by any savings, because that is what is paying for.
right, but there's also an increase to the operating costs with this bill.
about $40,000 a year, I believe.
It comes in addition. So,
If we were to do all of it, yes, it would require an investment of an additional $40,000 a year,
yeah, so.
which is likely what would be bonded,
Yeah, I mean, and
but it's there.
this, I mean, if you look at, and some of this stuff like the LED lighting. Now granted, I could say, yeah, I think that the cost, and, they answered their argument of how they manage a project and why they're worth what they're worth. And it's a reasonable explanation, but that's where the majority of the savings is coming from, and when you look at that, that's in the black, and it helps fund some of the other stuff that needs to get done. But the concern, like with this heating system and ventilators, it all needs to get replaced. And if we say we're gonna take this approach, sooner or later, the entire bill we're gonna get. The entire bill, if it's $1.2 million for this heating system and all the controls. It might even be more than that when you look at the way you go to LP gas boilers or whatever. But even if you were to keep the same oil-fired burner and go with that, you still need eventually to replace the air systems, the room exchangers. And does that approach make the best sense? That's one thing that I say, does that really, their approach to do it, does that make sense? Or does it make sense to say, okay, we're gonna go out and replace the entire system soup to nuts? I don't have that answer. So I mean, Tim asked the question, what do we absolutely need to do? And the minimum list, do we put that and start there? Or do we table it to when we know what's going to happen over the next few months?
Or do you look at doing the lighting, because it does appear that the lighting will pay for itself?
But if we're not back here, the lights don't need to be on.
Yeah, eventually they're gonna need to be.
But here's my comment on the lighting. We know we're gonna obtain savings out of the lighting. So why run forward down a path towards this process where we as a district can do the same thing? The finance company will finance us if we decide to go with a lease. Then we know there's going to be savings by converting over to LED. So we now have a savings. We now have potentially a cheaper installation or maintenance, somewhere between 20 and 30% off the project. And we can decide where that savings is going to go versus being locked into, it's got to go in the performance contract or the big picture of paying for this over the years. So if we look at this and say,
The bid that we have is specifically for the performance contract. So if we choose to do this differently, I don't know that this
well, I agree.
lender will do that for that. Not saying that we couldn't do another one, but.
I think this lender just did about $600,000 worth of leasing with the town, so I'm sure they're going to want to do business with the district as well within the last couple of weeks. They financed the fire engine, they financed the plow truck. So I don't think we're going to have a problem. It may not be that exact rate, but I don't think we're going to have a problem getting financing with the finance company. The question is going to be, do we have to go out to district in March to get that approval to go out to lease? But I don't think we're in any type of emergency saying we got to do the LED before the next district meeting. And I just like the balance. I think we need taxpayer impact or taxpayer input on the amount we want to spend. And B, I want to be able to tell the taxpayer, we looked at doing the biggest savings project on our own, and we looked at doing it with Siemens, and we're recommending Siemens or not recommending Siemens because of this cost savings. There's a lot less hands-on by going with Siemens, but we also have other alternatives, and I think this was put together. I just don't, I'm not comfortable with this proposal. I'll leave it at that.
Can I just add on a personal note?
Go ahead.
I was born in this town. I've lived in this town for 66 years now. I graduated from school here. My children graduated from school here, and my grandchildren are going to school here. And I appreciate, I'm a taxpayer. I appreciate everybody's view on this, but we've been working on trying to get something in the works here for 6 years since I've taken over this position, and it's just getting to the point where you get tired of just Band-Aiding everything. It adds costs down the road. I know we're a small town with not much money. And I have no skin in this game. If Siemens did it, that's fine. If not, it's just Siemens I've been working with. We have a good relationship with them. They've helped me out on a lot of things. They've done things for me that the technicians don't charge me for sometimes. Sorry, Jeff. But this was just the option that was brought out, which seemed to be the best option as far as getting some stuff done. And like I said, just, you get it, it's hard to keep trying to say, yes, we're putting $10,000 into some pumps to try to get things running a little bit better, when that down the road, it's a Band-Aid to a problem.
And this wasn't done hastily. We've spent 3 years trying to get this in front of the board, in front of the people. We've done multiple presentations. And it wasn't just trying to get Siemens in. So I want to make sure that you understand that it wasn't something that we did in haste. I understand that you may not be comfortable with it, and I understand that you're trying to be good stewards with what you've been entrusted with. I get that.
No.
But I need you to understand that so are we.
Yeah. No, I think there's been a lot of work here. There's, it does, Siemens has come in on their own dime or risk, because this contract repays that if and when we go forward with them. But they put a lot of effort into flagging everything that, everyone could say, yeah, these are the issues, and these are the dollar amounts that go with those issues. And whether you like the price or not, the issues that are listed are the issues we have.
That's true. And we now have a fairly comprehensive list of issues.
Right. And when you come to some of this, I don't know if this makes sense to say, do we try to go forward and scale back things that we know we got to fix, and wait to see what happens and then put forth something to the voters? But, you can go down through these things and you go, I just look at the list. I go building, high school, building envelope, walk-in coolers, the pumps, the DC to AH1. Right there, that stuff needs to get done. Whether or not you replace the lights today, or you replace the boiler or the ventilators, that other stuff's got to get done. And then when you go to the other school, you get the building envelopes, you get the ventilators that need to be improved upon, and then you get the pump systems, and where's the pumps. That stuff's got to get done. You take the lighting out of that and say you're not going to do that today, and not going to replace the boilers because we don't know where we're going to be. All this other stuff still needs to get done. Right. What is that scope, and does that make sense to proceed with?
And the ventilation is going to be perhaps
high
even more
priority.
paramount as we move forward, because we have had staff who've approached us saying the ventilation in my room isn't particularly good, and I'm nervous about coming back in a situation where I don't know what's in the air. And we are, we have mitigated where we can. I don't feel like we have unsafe conditions, and we have made sure that we've put staff.
And we've done air quality tests.
We've done air quality tests. We have, but it's something that is a perceptual issue as well that is there. And we've done the tests, we've made sure that, yep, you may not have a window, but it doesn't mean you don't have ventilation. But as we continue to talk about older ventilators, it makes people nervous.
But when you're referring that, you're talking to these in-room ventilators? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm referring to overall district ventilator.
Right, but it's like in this building.
In this building, yes.
I mean, one of the things that they've, well, it's not in this, originally the high school, which is, I assume, I don't know, what was it? I guess I was mistaken. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, because some of these items, the boiler replacement, are very large ticket items, and does it make sense to proceed with that or basically handle it differently?
And what we have in the CRF for the boilers
It's 100,000.
will cover one.
Right.
Will cover one.
I mean, right now, that's,
Right now, there's
That's-
100,000
Right.
in that account.
right, so that's basically, if we lost one tomorrow and had to replace it, we have the money for it.
We could do one. If two go, we're in trouble.
I mean, some of this I'm just not prepared to, ready to move forward with, but some of it I know we gotta do. So that's where I'm at. It's like, do we scale it back to the bare minimum and have them proceed and try to get it done this summer?
Well,
Or no?
if we were to go with this, it wouldn't be work done just this summer. It would, some of it might
Some
be
of
able
it
to be
might be
scheduled, some of
started.
it isn't going to be able to be completed. Now, if we aren't back immediately in the fall, that may stretch our window of what they can get done. But how much of this they would be able to do, because we're in late May now, some they can. I don't know that we could say, we're gonna do this whole scope and have it done this summer. Some of it may be able to be done over vacations, some of it may go into next summer.
So I'll back up and ask the question regarding the lighting scope. Is that something that they what was the planned timeframe for that to happen?
Well, if they were going to do it, first thing they were going to do was look at local electricians, stuff to go, to see whether or not they would be willing to do it. It would be, if we went with somebody to contract it, they would go with local contractors first to see.
But say if we had handed out approval last meeting,
Yeah,
or this meeting, and we got going, what was their projected time frame for those that?
we hadn't got to that point of discussions.
So it wasn't in this summer, next fall, next
It
summer?
would be,
This summer.
it would
we
be
can.
this summer, yeah,
Yeah.
it would be started, and it would be an ongoing project, I would think. The last time we changed to the T5 lighting down at Henry Wilson before I took over the position. I know Jim Langis was doing that job, and he was doing it at night or over the weekends.
But how long did that take, though?
Well, he was doing it by himself at the time,
Right,
so
so
that was, it was a couple months at least.
Yeah, it's not really good to have someone in the ceiling while you have kids sitting
No.
underneath you.
No, it's-
Could be entertaining, but it's not a good idea.
Well, any discussion from the other members of the board?
How long would it
I just
take?
think every year or month or week that we wait talking this to death, we are losing potential savings and potential time. These contracts are very popular. District after district are seeing that they want to use them because they see the advantage of it. And we've been doing this for 3 years. We should just act on it and stop overanalyzing it to death.
I'll overanalyze saving taxpayers' dollar any day of the year. I guess my question is how long?
Taxpayers expect us to protect their buildings. That's what they want us to do. They don't want us to think about it too much. They want us to look at the things, see what we need to do, and take an action. They've elected us to do that.
How long would it take to get we have to do this list, Larry, with everything that's going on now that you're doing?
Couple weeks, maybe. Or
I mean, as far as putting together
Put
the
it-
list, or?
Bear down, we know we
Timeframe
gotta
for
do
that.
this, this would be, out of this $2 million project, this is what can wait, but this is what definitely needs replacement, to whittle down that list of what has to be done, how long would it take to get that information back to the board?
Can you have it for the next meeting?
when's the
I
next
don't,
meeting?
2 weeks.
The first?
Yeah,
with everything else you're doing,
I can try.
okay.
I mean, really, on this list, they've categorized and said, this is the things that you feel, I mean, maybe you just go through and rate them. 1, 2,
I'll
and
share my
3.
assistant.
Yeah, I mean, 1, 2, and 3. This is number one priority, this is second and third. That would kind of give us at least understanding of, from you being in charge of this, the schools, to say, this is where you feel it needs to be done first. And if we take that on, if you just did a 1, 2, 3, 4, I don't know, it might just be 1, 2, 3, and say, okay, this is the stuff that needs to get done. And we're gonna have to deal with it, as a board, I think. I mean, some of this stuff, to me, replacing boilers is a significant investment, but the ventilation system in this high school, from what we have for a system to what they're saying we gotta go, is basically $1 million nut that we're gonna have to say, we're ready to take that, because if you take the first step, you're gonna have to take the other 2 or 3. You just can't say, oh, we're gonna replace
13 of them.
13 of them,
Right.
and say, okay, then not get the funding for it.
Right.
And not change out the boilers, and not change out whatever we need to do. Those kind of things, to me, they need to be considered in entirety, because you just can't do half of it.
Right.
And if you're not gonna, and you say,
So that's what's happened in the past.
because if we say we're gonna do this, and you got the 13 bottom ones, and then this falls off the table,
Then you're stuck with an upstairs that's,
and then you got half the system fixed.
yep.
And then, because if you do this one, and it takes a year to happen, right, because the installation is 1 year, so then they come back with another project a year later, that doesn't go, I mean, you could never get done. You only get some of it.
I'm personally, I'm just not comfortable with it indebting the town and the taxpayers to a company with a morally questionable history like Siemens for years and years and years.
Morally
That-
questionable?
That's a fairly broad statement that you've put out there. Is there anything you want to put behind that?
Because you lost me on that one. I don't understand what the reference to, Josh, but,
I'm sorry, I just dropped it off for some reason. I'm speaking to Siemens history as a company. They're internationally, their history is not one of good stature.
well, you have to, I only know them from their machine control sides for CNC, so that's my only limited experience with them as a company, but I haven't heard any negativity myself, but, and I mean, the other thing is that with that ventilation system and the control system, we're taking the steps that this is who we're gonna stay partnered with.
Actually, most all the systems now,
Right.
somebody else can take over the controls now, if need be.
Because they're for open architecture.
Right.
Right, so it doesn't
But
become.
as far as the building
sole
management
proprietor.
system.
I believe that can be integrated to other companies now, too.
Yeah, and I don't know the competitive companies in that arena. I don't know who they would be.
The only one that I know off the top of my head is Johnson Controls, basically.
Honeywell.
Honeywell,
Yeah.
Allen Bradley, they're not in that game. I don't know.
they sell a lot of equipment. I don't know of many where they're doing
Yeah,
the controls
The
themselves.
three that I've heard
Yeah.
are Siemens, Johnson Controls, and Honeywell. But those are the ones that I've,
Yeah, so I would, I think if you could prepare a rating of the list, A, 1, 2, 3, A, B, and C, what the highest priority is, and then we basically may agree and go back to them and say, okay, this is what we'd like to consider as a minimum project scope. Or the board decides we're going to do A and B. And that basically comes to this. But, I mean, your rating of where these need to be is, I think, is certainly more important to me regarding how they rate them, because you're the one living it.
Okay.
And you need to say, this is stuff we got to get done. And I think we need to get moving on some of it. But I don't feel comfortable just going out and borrowing $2 million just based on what they recommend. Because a lot of it has things that you will be doing. Whether you say you convert one boiler to LP gas, you made a commitment there that this is what you're going to be doing in the other schools. And when you say you're going to do this with your half of the air handlers, you just made a commitment for the rest of it. So that should be kind of saying, this is what it's going to take, and that should be a project.
so I want to be clear where we're going. So the board is asking Larry, technically through me, but it's fine, to prepare a list of ranked
Prioritized
order items that are the largest priority for us at this point.
Most important.
So do you want just say the four most important, or do you want pretty much, here's the list, where do they rank? Because you may say, okay, well, we're willing to go to this dollar amount, we could do this one, and this one if we had to, or are you looking just at give us three? Because I just want to make sure that he's making good use of his time as well.
If you want to add that additional detail, I'm okay with it. I know what you're saying. You're saying, okay, if it's, a detailed list of saying, if we get to this point and what would be nice, if you want to add additional content, I'm okay with it, because it may be that, okay, so there's maybe some on.
In per penny and per pound.
Well, some of these, you're making a commitment of how you're going to proceed. And you can't just do a little bit without saying, we acknowledge that we're going to spend $1 million redoing the entire ventilation system in this building. Because you can't do $180,000 and say, oh, well, we did that. But then the rest of the stuff you're carrying is 25 years old, and you update some of it, and you never made a commitment to replace it all. So that's why some of the structuring, the way they got it,
Replace the horn while the car rusts away.
well, you got to deal with it as this is the system. The system needs to be updated entirely. And it may mean that the ventilation system is a higher priority and the boilers wait. Because you can't do half of both. And if we had to, we could replace it, a boiler in kind, and then go say, okay, now we got a replacement, and whether that goes through them in another scope, or it's got to go to taxpayer. Still save money. I mean, there's some savings that can pay for this, but on most of this, it's not. Most of this is stuff we got to pay for. It's just whether we borrow the money from a bank, we go and bond it, or we raise it through taxation. The taxpayer's still paying for it.
It's how quickly and at what rate.
Right. I mean, to have it structured so you can budget for it is good. But you also have, to Tim's point, the voters gave us authority, but it was never put forth to the voters saying, oh, by the way, that authority could be $6 million worth of improvements that we just go out and do. Because that's what the total list is. Now, Grant's saying this one might be a $2 million scope, but
it's not a $6 million impact that tax year.
no.
And then that's what we need to be
Right.
clear with that part, because when you say it's yes, it's $2 million worth of improvements, no question.
Right.
But we're not looking at $2 million necessarily on the tax rate next year.
Right, no, you're looking
And
at
so-
$2 million the taxpayers are gonna have to pay over 17 years, because that's what they're proposing for a loan package.
But they're also looking at part of that being out of what is already within the current budget now, and I
Through savings.
understand. it-
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean it's $2 million additional to be additional
No.
beyond what is, it's
No.
not $2 million
It's not
new
additional,
money.
because you're gonna have
necessarily.
savings. And
Yes.
and that's why some of these savings that we should try to capture, that kind of also adds to the rating system, because the lights have the best return. Some of these other things we have to do, whether there's no return or not.
Right, so do you do this to get the return for that,
Mr.
or?
Chairman,
Go ahead, Joel.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the lighting project.
Okay, we have a motion. Joel made a motion to move forward with the lighting project. On all 3 schools?
Yeah.
So that's basically, I'll just give it the numbers, 287,000, 271,000, 299,000 for the 3 schools. So approximately 900, just shy of
Wait a minute,
$900,000.
where are you looking at that? Wait a minute, what is that on? I don't see that.
So you have lighting projects for each school. The Farmington High School is $287,914. The lighting for Valley View is $271,636,000.
What page are you on?
I'm on the, I don't know, toward the back.
At the backwards, okay,
Yeah.
yes.
And then for Henry Wilson, it's $299,440. So
Sorry, I'm not looking at the right thing here.
yeah, this,
Motion to move forward with the lighting project for Farmington High School.
so we have a motion to move forward with that project. Estimated cost is $287,000. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second for discussion. Any discussion?
I do. I agree we need, and we're gonna see some savings with the LED lighting, but I'd like to get a list of the priority items from Larry that he thinks we absolutely have to do. And it may be that we add the LED lighting on because we need that savings within the budget to help pay for it. But I'd kind of like to get an overall look at what we're up against, because if we're 300,000 here and then we have to, spend $1 million to get us up to where Larry thinks we need to be, I just think we're doing it in multiple steps instead of one. If we can have the information back in 2 weeks, I'm going to be more comfortable with those numbers than I am tonight. That's just my opinion.
Any other discussion on a motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Stan? Opposed? Me?
I'm opposed.
Josh?
No.
Motion fails. So,
I'll make a motion that we table this till next meeting.
based upon the information that,
Larry's going to provide us.
I'll second. Any discussion on the motion? Not hearing it, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
2 noes. Josh?
Aye.
Motion passes. Sorry, Larry, we're gonna give you some more work to do.
Okay.
Thanks.
Do you want me to be in touch with the lender to see what our timetable is there?
I could tell them the board is still considering how much, if any, we're going to ask to borrow.
Okay, well, and that's,
Yeah.
but I just to
Yeah.
find out if there's a time.
Wasn't there dates on locking our rate in their actual proposal? Wasn't
Yes.
I believe there is,
Do you know what
yeah.
that final date was?
I handed it to Larry. Let me see if I can get it digitally.
There's a list, I think that was listed. Let me see.
I believe it was.
From May 7th to June 5th.
Okay, so your
Yeah.
next meeting,
The rate will float and not locked in until documents are prepared. So it's only locked for
it's fixed until June 5th.
June 5th, and then it floats based
So
upon...
you have a meeting on the
whatever it
1st.
is. Yeah, but,
So you would be within, to still claim the fixed rate should you choose to do so.
right.
Okay.
And depending on which way the market, the rates are, it's not really, I don't think there's going to be a significant change one way or the other. Because I'm sure it's tied to the Fed rate, which is, they're trying to control. Not saying it could go way up. It may go down, but it's unlikely. I think they probably already brought it down as far as they're going to bring it. But I don't know what the Fed chairman's going to do. So moving along, next to contracts. Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have food service contract.
Okay, and I do also need to add to this, I have the custodial contract tonight that was agreed upon both by custodians and the board. It was ratified by the voters, but I have final version, I do need board signature on that tonight as well.
Do you need me to sign it? You need the board to authorize me to sign by motion.
The board certainly should do that as they have already ratified the contract. So, I do need chair's signature for that.
So,
I'll make a motion to authorize the board chair to sign on behalf of the board's ratification.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joel. So any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I probably shouldn't vote on that motion. I'll abstain.
You're a chair, if you want to sign it, you can say yes.
No, they don't need to. If they
You're
want me to
abstaining.
sign it, I'll sign it.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll sign that while,
Okay, well, I've got a whole pile for you to sign, so we'll add.
I'll do that right now. And if
Okay.
you want to start
Sign it
with
the right
the...
place. I didn't flag it for you.
You sure? Want to give me that one? No.
You want some sanitizer?
I got it here.
Okay.
Which model would you
If you
like?
want to start, Ruth Ellen, with the
Okay.
food service contract, I know you put it in our packet.
Okay, so the food service contract is in your packet. It is somewhat lengthy. There is a summary page for you in the outset, and I also included the page for last year's summary so that you would have by means of comparison. There are some pieces that, depending upon where questions go, we might want to discuss in non-public, but I'll see where questions go. Right now, we're looking at net cost to district. This last year, we were looking at a deficit of 32,222. This year's agreement, that page is, or the corresponding page is found next to the last page. So that you can compare, and I've lost it. No, there it is. The deficit to district in the coming year would be $1,000 more than it was budgeted for this year. We don't know for sure what food service is going to look like next year. We do know that if we are back in with social distancing, that we won't be sending kids to the cafeteria. Food will be delivered to classrooms. We may have a very different model. I can't predict exactly where those may affect these costs. And in part will depend on what we're looking at for numbers of students who are taking part. We had the ability to feed all students once we went into emergency orders. We've been averaging about maybe 25% or so of students who've taken advantage of those meals since we've gone into remote learning.
So in on the remote learning, so say if we've been having, say, a 25% usage, what have we been paying for? And if we say we start the year remotely, is our costs gonna,
Our costs,
are they gonna follow that 25%?
well,
Or we
our
can be paying
costs
for-
should be somewhat mitigated because we are now in a different structure than we were when we first went into remote learning. Cafe Services has changed its staffing model a couple of times. Partly because we went back and said, okay, we've got this deficit, where are we moving forward? And they said, well, but this is because we thought you wanted this. I was like, you never had this conversation and said we had a different model we could be using. You made an assumption here. So I know better what questions to ask. And we are not looking at remaining in the same deficit that we did for the first few weeks of remote learning for our meal service. However, it will depend entirely upon how many students are taking advantage of meals moving forward. Board voted that food service will end on the 2nd. CAP will be starting that on the 3rd. At the point that we come back to school on August 31st or so.
Of which year?
2020. That's first day for teachers. I believe the first day for students is 2 days later. But it will be, food service will be available. This is the 3rd year of a 5-year contract. So it's a renewal, but it's something that the board needs to take a look at.
So I guess my biggest concern is, depending on what it looks like going forward, if we only have 25% utilization of, are we paying for that 25%, or are we paying for 100%, and we've got all this food that people aren't taking advantage of, and what are we doing with it, and that, or are they gonna scale back to our needs, and, because we do have a revenue stream.
Right, it
Even though it
will
may
be
not be
scaled
100.
back. So they're not, if I'm not feeding 800 kids, they're not going to be ordering for 800 kids. If I'm feeding 200 kids like I am now, or a little bit more than that, they would be ordering for 200 kids.
So our costs, do we have proper safeguards so that our costs will follow our usage and parallel our current, say, revenue stream? So even though that we're in a deficit, because it's a planned deficit, if you want
Right.
school pricing, that follows what our usage is, so that instead of
Right.
us getting in a situation where all of a sudden, instead of being a net $34,000 loss,
It's a net 160,000.
160,
Right,
because-
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, do we have proper safeguards in this contract?
We do have, and that's what
Okay.
has happened in this last quarter. And there's been quite a bit of change
Right.
administratively for Cafe Services and for
Yep.
Fresh Picks. I'm now communicating on a fairly regular basis with the president himself,
Right.
saying, okay,
So-
here's what I'm
Right.
looking for.
So you're comfortable with this contractor that we've been using, that depending on the need, that our costs will follow the need at close to expected deficit ratio?
That's my understanding of what I have in front of me.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
So it'd be your recommendation that we continue with this, with them, and renew the contract? I mean, what are our choices?
Well,
If-
do I have the capacity right now to go out and do it myself?
No, but you know, the thing is,
But-
if you feel that they're able to adapt and meet our needs and not have the cost go out of whack, that's all we can ask.
Right.
And if you, based upon this, how it's been going so far, if you feel reasonably confident that that will happen, then I'm okay with it. Because that's all we can go with.
I know there had been at one point discussion about looking to see about bringing back in-house. At the point that discussion, I just feel like
Yeah,
I
I
need to
know.
put this on the table. At the point that discussion came up, I did not have a business administrator and said, I don't really have the capacity to do that right now. Let's look at it in the next budget process.
So that was brought up last year?
Going into, and I said, well, we need to kind of get going where we're going. At this point, again, I am without a business administrator coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And also looking at cutting over a financial system. So trying to scale up to run an in-house program this year may be difficult. Do we want to look at it down the road? Maybe.
Do you
There are
feel-
some advantages, but right now, do I feel like we have the capacity in-house to do it? I don't.
It's not something I would want to put on our plate to accomplish. If they're able to provide the service and keep the costs reasonable based upon our usage and our what we're taking in for revenues, and they're in good standing, I don't have any issues with not continuing. I mean, you have to give us your feeling, because if you feel that they can be successful, do we need a motion on that?
We do.
I'll make that motion to renew the contract with Fresh Pick Cafe.
I'll second.
Discussion? Any discussion from the other board members? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm gonna say no.
Okay, Stan's a no. Okay, Stan, do you mind me if I ask you why you're not in favor of renewing the contract? Do you think we should do it ourselves, or you don't think they're performing?
I think that we should be putting our own money toward doing it in-house, because I think we can save some money, and even if we have the exact same cost, at least we're supporting our own people and we're not supporting other people and other profits. We have to pay for things we don't buy with them because we have a contract, and I would rather just do it in-house. I think we can do better in-house.
Okay, I was just curious what your concerns were. And I don't disagree with that potential, because I think we potentially could look at it, but I don't know if this is the time to do it. Moving along to accounting software. Go ahead, Ruth Allen.
Okay, you had asked me last time to bring to you what the software agreement was and what it included for our upgrade for the financial software. And so that gives you our licensing price, the interface across. The total for the licensing is the $87.90, and then there's the hosting piece that would go with that. But then you've got the software installation services and the implementation piece. That's the portion that you can't do one without the other. You can't buy the software without the implementation. The software we're looking to do out of this year, the other we're looking to pay as we go, but would need to happen. We also would need to be
But that implementation number, which is the 20...
That's the
35,000, that's
yeah.
going to be incremental over the time that it's happening through,
Yes.
through individual billings for services rendered?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so the other piece that we need to do is the pro fund support. We will still be needing to maintain our current software for some years to come because we need it archivally to be able to get back to any number of things that the DOL or the IRS might need us to retrieve. So I can't just cut over and make it go away.
And where is that listed?
The annual support fee for that runs around $9,000 a year.
Is that on our existing contractor now, or is that with the new company?
Actually, Tyler Technologies is the one that made our current software and what we are looking to migrate to.
Okay.
So it's within the same, but it's not just there are significant changes between what we have and what we're going to. And a lot of what we have in our current system needs to be significantly reworked before we can just migrate. We can't just dump what we have and move forward with it.
But that's in the $35,000 number?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
That includes training, it includes doing other pieces, and that's on a typical migration. Now, if we run into a significant snarl and they have to really dig us out of the weeds, there could be additional costs there. I do have access to some people who have used these softwares for quite some time and do have some experience in doing some cutover. So I'm hoping that we won't be too far in the weeds and need too many shovels, to really badly mix my metaphors.
so the software is we're migrating from
We're migrating from ADS, which is ProFund, to Infinite Visions.
Okay. So the Infinite Vision license is $8,500. But to purchase it.
Right.
And actually discounted, so the license total is $5,000. And the 1 year maintenance is $1,056, which is consistent with, 20%, annual subscription.
And then we add the time card piece to it.
Yep, time card seems to be pricey, but it's probably got to do with the interface of equipment and so forth. That's a one-time charge. It's a one-time cost,
Right.
right? And
As
with
far as I understand.
a yearly maintenance
And
of
then
$505. So I guess everything looks reasonable. The only thing that you said that got my attention was that we had to maintain the annual support of the package we're migrating away off of for $9,000 a year for 3 years.
It's going to be at least that long, if not longer, because it's hosted and we need to maintain access to that information. And
Okay.
that's going to be the case with anything.
But this software and hosting is done by this current company.
Yes.
So we're not using it, we're just archiving the data and need access to it. So for me, I guess, is what can they do to assist us to not to carry this cost when all we need is archive data from their old platform?
Well,
It just doesn't seem
I
like a
think-
reasonable expense to me.
I think one of the things that they have already done is they have cut down on our fees fairly significantly because we're staying with them.
Right, but the 3-year fee to keep our current system is $24,000, and over the same time period, to buy and pay the licensing on the new software is going to be less than $9,000 for 3 years. You got $5,100 plus $1,500 a year, so you got 3 years is $4,500 plus $5,000 is $9,000, and they would like us to pay host our old system for $9,300.
We're going to need to pay that whether we go with them or we go with someone else. We're going to need that maintained. Now,
Well, we need
I
to pay
don't
that.
know if that's something we can migrate to our own server. We migrated away from to a hosted
Right.
solution because we were having significant problems with our internal systems, and I cannot afford to have that crash.
Right, but if this is for archive only, and,
Yeah, but if everything that's archived is on a system that crashes.
right, but we
everything's
could also have Jen look at putting it here, but also storing it in the cloud,
Carbonite.
so that we cannot have the subscription archive the data on site and in the cloud, and not do this expense?
I can look into it.
Yeah,
I don't know that that's going to be possible with this quote, but I can certainly ask.
Right, because we're just looking to access the data for, we're not using the software. You know, it's not like we're using Profound anymore. We just have to access it for historical data.
Well, but when access for historical data, so as I'm building a budget,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go back in to pull in
Right.
real time, looking at this year's budget, next year's budget. It's not going to be, at least for the first year or two, it's not going to be just if the
Right.
IRS calls. There's going to be more frequent access. And we're going to have to maintain them in parallel while we do that cutover as well.
Right, so,
First year, it's a definite, we've got to keep it.
right, but there could be a migration path that's sooner and cheaper to get that data, just so where we can still have access to it. That's the only thing
understand it
that, from you
rankles.
present, yeah, from what you presented, I'm okay with it. That's the only thing that flags a concern, that I think there's still room to come up with a solution that's not quite as financially intense.
Just my question was, are they, and I'm not sure whether I heard it right, are they predicting a 3-year migration period where our old data will now be in the new system? Or is that something that can happen quicker, and if so, at what cost?
We're looking at, because of our capacity, being down a member of the business office and all that, that it's going to take us probably 18 months at the fastest to do this cutover, because we're going to need to do a lot of scrubbing of the data as it goes over. Well, and we can't just stop running the district while we do it. So we're going to have to do those pieces together. I would say between 18 and 24 months to get this done. If it can go faster, we may find that once we get going, it's smooth sailing, and I'm all for it if that happens. I just know that in having talked to business administrators who've done this in other districts, who've gone from this to what we're looking to move to, that they've said 18 months is about as fast as you want to try to do it and get anything done well.
So that's not a,
So that $35,000 is expected to be expended over 18 months to 2 years, but the bulk of it will probably happen the first year.
That's what I'm anticipating.
okay. So what do you need from us?
Before I can do the contract, because this is in excess of $5,000, as you pointed out last time that you wanted to take a look at this, I certainly, wasn't going to sign a $400,000 contract, not going to sign this one either.
So does it make sense did you go back to them regarding this profound continued support
Profound.
over fund? Does that make sense to see what they can do?
I can certainly ask. I don't know that it's going to change much, but I
Well,
can ask.
I think there's some
I
room
will-
there. But, and everything else here I'm okay with, the way it's structured out. I think that's, especially if we have migrated in 2 years, you might be able to go no more than 2 years with it. You could potentially get it the first year and then just archived here and in the cloud this next couple of years for a reduced rate, or I don't know. So But everything else I think I'm okay with.
So what's my motion?
I don't know, do you have a motion? Is there a motion on the
I don't
table?
get to make a motion.
Oh.
I'll move to accept it.
To accept it as written?
Yep.
We have a motion to accept it as written. Is there a second? Anyone for a second and Stan's motion?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the motion?
Stan's motion was to approve the Tyler Technologies proposed contract for the iVisions, or iVisions?
Infinite Vision.
Infinite Visions software upgrade. The only discussion to it that was about some of the annual pro fund supporting fees. Stan's motion was to approve it as written.
I do have that, excuse me, Jen, she'd understood we were able to pull it onto one of our servers 1 year, after 1 year's migration is successful for archiving. So a year after we've migrated, we could pull it onto our servers for archiving and do our own. And she had planned to do that.
So 1 year after we migrate, which would be 1 year after the 18 months, or 1 year after we...
Jump in, Jen.
Jen, are you with us? I didn't
All
forget.
right, I was answering someone's question.
Sorry.
So,
Can you repeat that again?
so the question from my question would be, if we can, after 1 year, download it and host the data on our own server, when would that year start as far after this contract is awarded? Is it going to be 18 months and then the year, or is it going to be 1 month or 9 months? So if we can pull that off, and
How long after migration can we host our own? Is that
Yeah.
the translation?
Right.
Okay.
So I had the conversation with them initially, as you know, before Ms. Mellon started, because my peers have gone through this, and so I already knew ADS was going away and started the conversation. So one thing I talked to them about was how long do I have to keep ProFund hosted? Now, having it hosted right now, we have the benefit of it's completely updated to the version they need to migrate to the new software. That was important because when it was local, we had the oldest version and it was going to be a nightmare to move over. And I said, okay, well, how long would I have to keep it over? And they said, minimum, if you get things done fast, 18 months. Expect to leave it with us for 18 months, and then after that, if you're successful in 18 months, it goes really fast, then we can work with you moving it as soon as possible to your local server. So I would say safely, 18 months, 2 years, we might have to keep it up there, but by the third year, beginning up, I can pull it down locally, and we have backup apparatuses as well. So I think within a couple of months, after the 18 months, we should be good.
so if we were to go forward with this contract as proposed, that cost would be for 2 years, which would be about $18,000.
Right.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So
And that was included in what we were looking to budget moving forward.
okay, so moving back to Stan's motion, which is to approve as written, which would define, or at least we got an estimated what those costs would be for the pro fund hosting. Do we have a second for Stan's motion? I'll second. Any discussion? What's that? I second it for discussion.
Okay, all set.
Discussion?
So I get the $9,000 fee, but just so it's clear on my mind, are we not spending $9,000 to just archive this data? That $9,000 is to have
This
the
system
program in the
scaled up.
cloud so that we can do the transition from this point to this point, correct?
and you can run both systems.
And
Okay.
they're continuing to do any updates to make that possible.
And the system we're using now is on the last leg. Okay. Can you, because before we make the motion to
It
approve.
twitches routinely.
Okay. So before we make a motion to, I'll do a point of order, before we do a motion to award the bid, I think, or to award the quotation, I think we have to do a motion to waive our bidding requirements.
Yes, you
So,
would.
so what I'd like to hear
Yep, yep.
in the point of order is, what is the advantage of going with this software company now? Is it because of what we have as proprietary, that the transition is going to be smoother and more economical? I'd like to hear some type of reason justifying the sole source
There's-
non-bid.
There's a couple of things. One is that there are not great numbers of softwares out there that do this sort of thing. And with what we have, smoothest transition is the big part. And I will say that while what we have currently is hiccuping as it goes, this company has been incredibly responsive, even though we're running software that they would like to see go away because they're not doing those other pieces. They have been more than willing to call us from other time zones if need be to make sure that they've got somebody who walks us through what needs to happen. That's huge. And a big part of the reason why I'm looking to stay with Tyler, frankly.
So, Stan, will you consider withdrawing your motion so we can have a motion to waive the bidding requirements before that?
Or you make a friendly motion,
Oh.
friendly amendment to include.
Yeah, I'll make a friendly amendment to,
Well, it's his motion, right? It was your second, it was
Right,
Stan's motion.
Stan's motion.
So
You can
Stan,
make a friendly amendment to waive the bid and award,
Okay.
either way.
that's fine.
That's fine.
I'll accept that also. So the motion is to approve as presented and waive the bidding policy requirements. Any other discussion? Not hearing, all in favor? Aye.
I'm gonna vote aye.
All right.
Unanimous.
Josh?
Josh was an aye.
No.
Oh, I
No.
thought it was an aye.
Okay, moving along, next we have student handbook.
So this is the high school student handbook that typically goes out to print in the spring. There are some fairly minor changes to this. Policies have been updated and they have been more thoroughly referenced. Driver's education has been removed because we no longer have driver's ed. Dismissal procedures have been updated. Hats are removed as dress wear not allowed, and extracurricular eligibility has been changed. Students may not fail more than one class.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Joel.
Are we still on block scheduling next year?
Yes, we are, but it will be modified block in that we will be running full year skinnies, which would be half block, A and D block, and then B and C block would be regular block schedule, but yes.
So what's the maximum amount of courses that students could potentially take in a semester?
8. 8.
Okay. So,
No, I'm sorry, in a semester it would be
Is air
4.
block-
In a semester it would be 4, it'd be
oh,
8
wait a
per
minute,
year.
are we still quarterly or are we in semesters?
We are still quarterly, but if you go by, the blocks change
Okay.
at semester unless it's a full year skinny. And so they would be taking no more than 4 classes at a time. That's probably a better way to put it.
Okay. Okay, that was my question.
Okay.
Does the extracurricular change. Is Eric Larkham on the call?
Eric, are you here?
I am.
He is.
Eric, does this change to the extracurricular eligibility policy, which I noticed in parentheses includes athletics, does that still match the NHIAA policy?
Can you hear him, Eric?
Yeah, I heard that roughly. This is an extension of the NHA policy. What we currently had this year was the NHA, the lower policy of the NHIA. So this is an extension of the NHIA policy.
But what's the change in this policy? Is it just to add other clubs and things to the same type of requirement that athletics has been following?
Can someone repeat that question? I couldn't really hear.
Does this change essentially add the eligibility requirement to other extracurriculars rather than just athletics?
What's the change? I guess what I'm asking, Ruth Ellen, is what did it say previously? What's the change in this? I mean, you guys have said that you changed it, but what did you change it from?
Specifically, how did it read, Eric?
The scholastic standing policy that we're looking to do, ruling.
What is it currently? Students can fail how many classes?
So the current one is based off of when we used to have, I believe it was 5-6 classes. So we resulted back to the NHI, so they had to pass 50% of their classes in order to be eligible for school athletics. So they've taken 4 classes, they have to pass 2 of them. When they fail 3 of them, that means they're ineligible.
So now this takes that to 25%?
But was the NHIA referring to block scheduling? They couldn't have been, right? Or would they?
Well, NHIAA just says 50%. They don't delineate whether it's half, whether it's 2 classes or 4 classes. I believe they just have a percentage.
Yeah, they have a general percentage because they knowing that every school has a different amount of classes that kids taking in a quarter or a semester.
So,
Okay, all right. I wasn't sure if we were leaving block scheduling, but it sounds like we're pretty much staying with it, but it's going to be modified.
I guess it is possible that a kid could be taking up to 6 classes at a time if they took 2 skinnies, A block and B block, but it would be all year long. So those would be year-long classes as opposed to semester classes.
now, in this change of an eligibility that they were talking about, so currently, before this change, it was 50%, and now we're saying a student cannot fail more than 1 class per semester, I assume, so it would be 25%? Is this the change?
And actually, you might want to look at a percentage, because if a student does take 6 classes, that's different from a student taking 4.
Here's my thing. We have a well.
Go ahead, Joe.
We have a state entity that we pay dues to, that we're a member of. In my opinion, when it comes to athletics, I know there's lots of extracurricular activities here at the high school, but when it comes to athletics, I think we should follow their recommended policy. I don't think I think athletics needs to be in its own sort of realm, because we have an entity that governs athletics throughout the whole state. Now, I get that we have the authority to make us, different, but I really think we pay dues to this entity. We are governed by their rules when it comes to athletic competition. We should follow their recommendation and their wording, because it can get real fuzzy when when people look at their bylaws versus our policy.
And Joel, I mean, I understand that, but understanding most districts do not use the NHI policy for eligibility. The policy states that schools have, like you stated, have the ability to extend it, and most schools do that as well. They don't go to what the policy of the NHI is. They go above that. That's typical practice.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, Eric, until you can give me a list of schools and prove to me otherwise. Because for years, many schools followed the NHIA policy. There were only a few. I've been down this road before with school boards when I was the athletic director, and we have a past vote where we voted to go with the NHIA policy. That's somewhere in minutes in his policy. So if we're gonna change that for athletics and go against the NHIA policy, this is just me as one member, I would love to see a comparison with other districts and how many of them do not follow the NHIA policy as recommended.
Yeah, I mean, I can gather some of that information for you.
Well, I guess
Thank you.
one concern I have is if this is a significant change regarding if a student fails more than one class, and the amount of classes that somebody could take, because there might be smaller classes,
Right. And
does that make sense?
I guess what I would still recommend that it goes by percentage rather than number of classes, because we've introduced now, last year, everybody was taking 4 classes each semester. The fact that we've introduced year-long classes means that a student may be enrolled in 6 classes at a time, which means failing 1 class if you're juggling 6 and failing 1 class if you're juggling 4 isn't necessarily equitable.
And that's why the NHIA changed their policy to begin with, because their policy for many years read you had to pass 4 classes, okay? And then they changed it to some percentage rule because everybody was starting to go to block scheduling and change what their scheduling looked like.
Do you want to table this until we get the list from
Yeah.
Eric?
I just have another comment while we're on lists.
Go ahead.
Page 27. Under, what's the, 1, 2, third paragraph down, it talks about the buses and the installed audio and video. We reference our audio-video surveillance policy, but I think it would make good sense within the actual handbook to give the required RSA notification as part of the handbook.
Okay, yep.
I don't see any.
And then at the top of that, we also need to change the policy. It's not 3541,
Right.
it's ECAF. Yep. Okay. We can add that.
Anyone with anything else? Okay, so I guess we're going to get supporting information regarding who's following what guidelines, along with a proposed, I guess, change to the ineligibility section, going to percentage or something.
I believe we're going to do a poll of schools to see who is using what for their eligibility requirements. Is that your understanding, Eric?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Does it make sense to do a poll, or,
I think we can probably ask NHIAA because they will have that from schools.
well, what is their policy,
I don't know.
what is their policy compared?
Policies.
Yeah, I don't know how would they know what schools are
Yeah.
doing?
I'm just curious, is how does the NHII policy differ from what Eric is proposing?
They say 50%, and so 50% for us would be either 2 or 3 classes, depending upon how many classes a student is taking.
Well, I guess when they come back, I would probably want to hear, if we're using something different, why we're proposing that. But there must be reasons. What are those reasons?
Okay.
I don't want to have it,
Yep.
just at that time. This is what they recommend, this is what we're suggesting, this is what other schools are doing, and these are the reasons why we're suggesting this.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to table to the next meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Got them all. Next, under old business,
How you doing, buddy?
we have MOU for SRO, which is a memorandum of understanding for school resource officer.
We have a document that has gone back and forth between selectmen and the school board. There had been some questions that the school board members had asked before they were prepared to sign this, and they indicated that those questions had been answered. And so I've had several emails from Mr. Capello saying, have they signed it yet? So I'm bringing it back to you to see if tonight might be a time when we can get that signed. And what I will do, because it's asking for full membership signing on at least the major memorandum, the Safe Schools Act would be the chairman. Actually, Safe Schools Act is the police chief and myself. The camera use addendum is the chairman and the select board. And then the full memorandum is full select board, the chief of police, the full school board, and myself. I can put this into a DocuSign, send it out so that we have electronic signatures. I can send that to everybody. Obviously sign in person here.
I'd just like to keep it simple. I'll make a motion to authorize the chairman to execute the agreement on behalf of the board, and that we take this page of the minutes with that motion and attach it to the agreement so that it's one signature, it's gone. But I don't think we need to go through all the electronic signing. I think,
Do you think that'll be sufficient or no? It's us in the
I
town.
would say the ones who are here, let's sign it, and then
That's fine.
we can certainly attach that to it, and then if they would like, we could go back and do the electronic
I
signing.
mean, if anybody wants to electronic, I just don't, I don't have an issue with that. I just was trying to save on the,
The back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I want to make sure that it's not misconstrued, that we want you to sign it, but we're not going to.
right, okay. I'll withdraw my motion.
I will scribble it up.
So, anyone have any discussion or comments or concerns regarding the revised memorandum of understanding for the SRO officer? Well, I guess, a couple of questions, Ruth Ellen. I think you've already addressed it, but I'm going to have you answer them again.
Okay.
So based upon the use of the document, the last one, this would be at least the third one, because I worked on the second one. So this is a revision of that one.
I think it might be the fourth one.
Could be the fourth one. Any of these changes that have been implemented, that all required members of staff have been informed and trained and signed off that they've been trained and informed?
They have been.
So at this point, staff on both sides of us and the PD have
Well,
proper...
I can attest to
Okay.
my staff. I can't speak for the PD. I know that the SRO was present
Right.
at our trainings.
So the SRO was present at our training, which informed everybody of what's in the MOU, what's required under the Safe Schools Act.
My training with the admin covered the full piece. With my staff, it was the Safe Schools
Okay.
report. All the rest of it,
Yeah.
on the nitty-gritty with
They
the
don't
SRO,
need to know.
it's not the best use of our time.
So, at this point, everybody's been, at least, training has been updated to all those people who need to.
Receive said training, and it will
Okay.
happen again next year.
Good, good.
This is
As
an
long as we're
annual
making
sign-off.
continuous improvement in this area.
So I'll make a motion to approve the MOU as written with all addendums.
The motion was seconded by Joel. Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor? Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
unanimous.
Okay. Next, we have year-end schedule for staff.
And I'm gonna, this will be part of the superintendent's report that I have too. We're looking at two pieces. Instructional year for students will end June 2nd. Teachers and paraprofessionals have additional days in their contracts beyond that date. And the FTA had brought a proposal forward to the board asking for days to be forgiven at the end of the year. We have a tremendous amount of processing to do regarding the close of the school year and the start of the next. But I certainly want to recognize the effort that staff has put in to provide remote learning to our students. I'm asking that the board grant the 18th and 19th of June to teachers and paraprofessionals alike, with their last day in district to be the 17th.
Discussion, any discussion on that? Ruth Ellen's recommending to us to cut the required days for teachers down by 2.
So what is the actual last contract day?
It would be the 19th. The teachers had requested the 9th.
Okay.
So based upon what staff has to accomplish, you don't think that's feasible, but you feel a couple days to be able to.
I'd like to at least be able to acknowledge they've put a tremendous amount of work in. We also have an awful lot of debriefing and processing that we still need to do to get ready for a new school year. And part of the rest of my piece goes into some of what that will entail, but I don't know if you want to stop here to do that part. What we will be doing over those last days, we have scheduled time for teachers to be closing out the school year as far as their grading. We have scheduled vertical meetings between grade levels and also between buildings to make sure that we have things set for kids as far as placements. We're also looking at curricular alignment during that time. We are looking at additional training in regard to social, emotional, and behavioral pieces that we know that we're going to need to tackle moving into next year. We do have outside agencies that are coming in to work with us on some of those pieces. We also have additional in-house training that will be done both through our learning platform of EduPlanet and through trainings that Jen may be running, or I have another computer trainer coming in. Misty will be running some. I'll be facilitating some pieces. So there's a lot of schedule time. I also need to get teachers in just to be able to get in the building, get their stuff. A number of them are moving classrooms. We are not going to just open the doors. It will be scheduled time in. You're in here from this time to this time, socially distanced, to make sure that we do this safely and in an orderly fashion.
So Ruth Allen is looking for us to, a motion. So I'll make that motion to make the last day for teachers be
For teachers and paras,
Paris, which would be this
the 17th.
17th.
Which is a Wednesday.
Yes.
I'll second it for discussion.
Any discussion?
I do.
Go ahead.
So, and I don't have the document in front of me, but I looked at it. I looked at the teacher's contract. April vacation, we're scheduled to be closed. And we opened.
I took that time into account.
So, but there was a holiday in there too, right? How does that play in with their?
That was counted as the days, as the hours went forward.
Okay. So.
And it's not because as I'm counting hours, that holiday doesn't count for or against as the hours go. It's the hours that we're in school that I can count toward when we can be done instructionally. The difference is when we look at a contract for teachers, again, it's by days in. It's 185 days in. And so they taught that week, and so that full week counted
As
for
days
them.
in.
Yes. There is, the holiday counts in the Paris contract as far as an additional paid day for them. Teachers, because they're not paid hourly, they don't get the holidays or vacation days.
So I guess I got a question for Joel, being in the trenches. And I kind of heard this presented during the budget hearing. So the 15th, 16th, and 17th is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. How much, Joel, if you were in the shoes of a teacher on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, last 3 days of school, how productive is professional development going to be for those 3 days, in your opinion?
To be honest, I don't have anything to draw from, Tim, because when I worked there, we didn't do that. That was the last days where the kids were gone, and then we might have had a half day left that we got to clean out our classrooms, but I don't recall ever participating in any at the end of the year. I've heard good stuff about it, but not enough to really give you a good opinion.
Okay.
And my question, Tim, would be, if it's not those 3 days and I back it up 3 more days, it's still my last 3 days.
I agree. I get where you're going in that direction.
Can I chime in, Ruth Ellen?
Well, that's up to the chairman.
Who's that?
That's Misty.
Hi, Misty. Go ahead, Misty.
Hi. I'm just going to say that this is a very unique situation, too, that we're in, and we have whole loads of planning to do. So it's not so much formal professional development. Like, we're not going to be putting teachers into mandatory sessions of training. We need to have time.
There is one.
But we're not able to bring everybody together physically either. So that presents a whole other element of things that we have to deal with in terms of trying to collaborate and facilitate. But we have to plan for summer programming as well as what it's going to be like in the fall. So we need that time. And it's not going to be like, it's going to be lots of different things that we got to do over that course of time, from small group meetings to full staff meetings to, so having that time in there is what's really important. It's more about the planning, but also teachers collaborating to plan for instructional design that they need to be preemptive for the fall, because that's part of our problem in just being triaging into our situation to begin with, is that we just jumped into this without a whole lot of being able to front load. So one of my personal expectations is for people to be able to front load more going into the fall. And so it's having that time to have those rich discussions and plan and build going forward in lots of different elements. So I just wanted to make sure it was clear that it's not like we're talking about formal workshops or trainings. Though some pieces of that will be offered choice and voice for teachers, it's more about that really important planning time to get ourselves set up so we're even better going forward than we were going in currently. And that to me is an important thing to just throw out there in terms of this time. And it seems like a lot of time, but it's just not. Because we aren't able to throw staff together for 3 intensive days or something to really lay this out. We've got to do things a bit differently because we have to do everything so remotely. So I just wanted to put that out there as you think
And I will say that the morning of the 10th, a good chunk of that will be for the senior farewell, as the seniors come to pick up their cap and gown and yearbooks. Staff will be lining, doing their goodbye to staff, goodbye to seniors. So, which is also really important, really important.
So I guess my question is during an average teacher instructional day since we went to remote learning, how much professional development has been going on during that period? The average, above average?
Because it's been structured differently, there has been more that has been provided as, here's your menu, look at what you need. There has been some that has been done on Fridays when they've been working together as building level or grade level staffs. But it's not been full on, here's what you're going to sit down and do. There's been an awful lot of, here are resources to help you pick your menu, get together, compare things with your colleagues, because they've had to be designing very differently than they've been doing before.
So the 18th, we're at May 18th now, June 18th would be 30 days. Is there time within that period where they're doing professional development time now that could be reallocated during the transitions and the studies that you need them to be aware
They're
of?
still in the process of delivering instruction now, though. Part of what we're looking at is getting beyond where they're finished with kids. They've got the grades closed and done, and then to be able to look forward to doing the planning for summer and fall, which to try to do that on top of what they're doing now is extraordinarily difficult.
So you're going to need 7 days to accomplish that.
I'm going to need at least that, yes. Yep.
And I will tell you that what they have to do in terms of assessing and giving kids feedback right now, they need to be able to focus on that. Especially where they have to, they really have to collect all this and really give feedback and input fairly accurate grades. We can't dump a lot of other extra stuff on top of that, because they really need to be using that time to be really focused on the kids.
Any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Aye.
Unanimous.
The other part of what I just wanted to put out there is that as the administrative team makes plans for the close of the current school year, we're looking at the debriefing, the professional development for that foundation. But we're also looking at 5 broad scenarios that may be facing us in the fall. One, a normal return to in-person classes for all students. That's what we would like. But certainly that's only going to be if we're permitted by state officials and it's deemed safe by the school board with questions of social distancing answered. And there are a lot of questions. 2 would be a continuation of remote learning, but that's going to need to be restructured to provide long-term continuity. We turned on a dime and did a pretty good job of getting a lot put out there, but we know that if this is something that we have to continue long-term, we need to do some things differently to sustain that. We might have interrupted on-campus learning. Students are back alternating between attending classes for several weeks and then learning at home for a period of time, particularly if we have another outbreak. If we come back to school and then find that we have to pivot and head back to where we are. A hybrid learning model, which some have really touted, some groups attend class in school, others at home, and the groups switch. But really the only way to do that is to have a break for cleaning in between, and because you can't share teachers back and forth, because then if you have to social distance so everybody can't be in, you also can't have the exposure to multiple groups of kids. So that's probably our toughest logistics. And then a parallel pathway, which is also a hybrid model, through which some students would learn in class while others learn virtually, either because their families didn't feel safe sending them back or were not able to do so for any number of reasons. So we would have some teachers teaching remotely with this group, some teachers in school with the other group, because we may have kids or families who have additional medical sensitivities that might preclude them from being able to come back. At first glance, our biggest challenge is regionally and nationally to look at options. How do we increase our capacity? And as the board had directed me back in late February to look at potential partnerships with other districts, where we could gain some capacity there. I've had some conversations with superintendents. Obviously, nothing is binding. We're looking to see how we can partner in planning, how we might be able to partner down the road in delivery of instruction if we find ourselves up against a wall and need to go that route. But obviously, that requires board votes and MOUs and a lot of other things. Right now, we're just looking to see how we can support each other as we look to see what our options are.
Okay, now I got some questions for you.
Okay.
So in the last two scenarios that you talked about, those would be something that this board would have to decide. Let's start with the last one, which would be some people, kids are going to be learning from home and others are going to come in. We would have to find reason to take that approach, right? Right? So
Potentially, if I have students who can't come in, it might end up becoming a medical accommodation.
So when you say can't come in, if we're allowed to come back full force by the governing bodies, then that scenario we would have to choose.
Potentially, yes. Yep.
And we would have to have, significant reason to do that. Can't just say, we feel like it. Because we would have to then maintain two systems.
Yes.
And which
Capacity begins to diminish in doing so.
Yes, and success may also be a challenge because you're managing two different systems with two different groups. Some people here, some people at home, and
However,
that's a concern.
we also have some kids who thrive much better in one system versus the other, which might be something we need
But
to
doesn't mean the ones that choose which to be in which system means that those are the ones that can thrive and not struggle. But the third system you had, or the one before that, you talked about having alternating people here, and students here, and then students learning at home. That would seem to be also very logistically problematic
I would agree.
and potentially tough to accomplish educational goals, and for parents to
Very disruptive to
manage.
schedules, yes. And I would say, logistically speaking, it's probably going to be all in or all out. The potential of the parallel pathways could work. The swapping back and forth is going to be the toughest. And if I don't have everyone in, like I said, transportation is my weak link. Because if I have to maintain any type of social distancing on a bus, it's going to become incredibly difficult for me to transport.
Yeah, I think that that's going to face every district, and it's either going to be kids are allowed on the bus, or if that's not allowed, then they're going to have to be brought to school, because it can't be done. Logistically, probably can't be done.
Right.
So-
And that's where it would more than likely then force us to remote learning, because by law, my walking distance or my requirements to bus are outside 2 miles. Right now, we have a 1.5 mile walking district. I also am not required by law to provide transportation to students over 14, but that also becomes problematic.
But if they can't ride on the bus because of social distancing, or they can't have that many students on the bus, you'll have the same requirements inside the school, which is gonna make it logistically very difficult for, I mean, we don't have very large class sizes, or excessively large, so it may be more feasible for us than some other.
But it's still a challenge.
Just want to go back to your comment, Superintendent, on remote learning versus in classroom. And Mystic can pop in if you so desire. But in my mind, why do we have to have two systems? Why can't we have a teacher in the classroom that's teaching her class the normal way that he or she would teach, and a remote connection like we're doing tonight that would allow a student to interface with that classroom if we had to go into a dual mode to offer instruction? Is there anything wrong with that, or we just don't have the licensing, or what would stop that?
I would say on the home side of things, the thing that might prevent that from happening is if there were an internet capacity issue, and maybe not where you'd have, yep, we've provided a hotspot, but is that enough to do 2 live streams if you have 2 or 3 students there at a time trying to access? That part would be probably the biggest challenge there, and whether or not parental schedules could take having 3 kids trying to find a space to be on live all day. I don't know.
Okay. So that, to me, sounds more like research that we have to do to see what our children's capabilities are, technology-wise.
Yep. And we have had, that's part of what we're looking to give you in broad strokes next time we meet. Looking to see what we're going to need. We have had more hotspots available than we have had need in district at this point.
My second comment is as we look at these models, and we don't know what these models are going to be till minimum end of June, and even if we get the models at the end of June, that data potentially could change from June to September, and we're back.
Anyway.
We're kind of back where we started. But one of the concerns that I've seen from some of the community postings is we have students that are doing very well and thriving with remote, and we have students that are having a tough time with remote. And then I'm listening to Diana, who has, a special needs group that kind of needs attention. So as we model this, I'd like to look at, somehow getting our special education children into the school system if that's where they're going to thrive. And as far as the online, looking at the kids who have thrived during the remote that we're doing now that could stay with it and thrive on if that was their option, and the kids that are just having an incredibly hard time, those kind of be our targets, that if we have a limited capacity at school, kind of what we look at. So there's
And I will say that some of our special ed kids are the ones who have taken this and run with it. They're doing really, really well. So I want to make sure that we're not kind of pigeonholing.
And I don't want that either.
Yeah.
My point of my comment was,
the ones who need to be here to prioritize to get there first. That makes perfect sense. And if capacity ends up being limited, again, it's going to be, can we do in the numbers that we need to do? I don't know yet, and that's part of that processing after we get grades closed, after we're looking at class lists, who's where we expected them to be, who's exceeded our expectations, who's floundered, and how do we start building out those lists? Because we may find the numbers aren't what we expected, either way.
Okay.
And that's a lot of that vertical teamwork, along with just the curricular piece, looking at how do we build based on the needs that we've seen floated in front of us in the past 2 months. Because we've got to look at things differently than we have.
Okay, I'm good.
Any other board members with questions or concerns or thoughts regarding what Ruth Ellen was discussing? I guess not.
Okay.
No, I think we'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen and whether or not there's any statewide recommendation for how it's happened. I think it will be restructured. I mean, the school in general will be restructured. We won't ever go back to what we were before because we have new capabilities. We're opening up new avenues to students. So we should be open about how we'll do this.
Right.
Yeah, I certainly don't disagree with that, but we also have to have ways to judge the success of our students with their education and not kid ourselves that everyone's doing great. I mean, we need to be able to make
that's
sure
not what's
that-
happening here.
I know, but we need to say that because we don't want people to, students to fall too far behind before we realize they're behind as far as where they need to be. Well, because then it's it just becomes more difficult. It's just like when you're in college, if you fall a couple days behind, you've got a big hurdle. And without help or perseverance, you may not make it.
So
Anything else? We have budget. It's on the agenda.
just, it was on there because it's been on there. Did everyone get a copy of What's Not Purple that was sent to you?
I looked at it.
Okay.
Can you tell me what the approved date is on that?
The approved date was the date of the vote.
The
So
date?
it says approved 3/10/20.
Okay.
But down in the bottom right-hand, actually, I may have printed this beyond, this says 5/6 in the bottom right-hand corner. The date it was printed. But up here, it says approved 3/10/20 because that was the date of the vote when the operating budget passed.
So the operating budget that you put in the folder that you have in your hand now, that's the
Yes.
operating budget that the prior board approved without amendments from us?
No,
Or,
this is the amendments from you based on that 770 amount.
okay,
The 770,740 reduction. This is how Jana had headed it in there. But this is based on what should be voter approved bottom line. And this was the placement that we've discussed over the past few months. And I can certainly put a different header on the report.
I've got some questions, but they're related to personnel adjustments, so I'll wait until non-public.
Okay.
Okay.
I will say that this was done prior to any adjustments that we did in the last couple of meetings.
Okay, so if,
Because this was
yeah.
what was done as of
Right.
for the MS 22.
okay, but I think if we're going to send a budget to the Budget Committee, and I think that's why this was brought forward, I'd like to see all the amendments we made from,
The adjustments, the personnel adjustments can be placed here.
okay,
What happens with that, though, because they weren't budgeted as such,
it's going to show as an
so it's going to
overage.
show as an overage.
But I'm fine-
So it shows as an overage
Yeah.
as it gets expended.
Yeah.
Go.
And I'm fine with that. I just want them to get the complete picture of everything we've done so that when they get their second printout, they don't say, hey, what happened here, what happened here? I'd like to say, this is this
Well, and-
board's finalized approval.
Can you add a
This-
column or showing to the end that, saying that what was approved and what,
Yes,
flag those?
there's adopted and there's approved. So the approved column would be, that's where it would be, the adjustment would be made.
I'd like to see those adjustments in the budget that we sent to the budget committee.
Yep, and this has not gone to the budget committee
Okay.
as such yet.
And if there's any way to highlight those that are different, we may want to do that, so.
Even if we just do bullet points on what we changed.
I can do it in after I printed it out, I can physically I can't bullet point in
What
the
about-
software.
What about highlight?
I can do it after the fact and then print it, but I can't do it in the software. That's one of the, we're getting you software.
I think one of the things that, and one of the disadvantages that we've had is we haven't had any budget committee meetings. So I think they've gotten an awful lot of material, and then they're getting a brand-new budget. So within that budget, I'd like to see a memo saying, these are the actions that this was the number that was presented.
Okay, we can put notes in,
Yep.
and those notes can be added. It'll obviously lengthen it, but that's fine. We can add notes to it and then
Okay.
print the notes. What it will do, if I print notes, it will take all of the notes from the budget in the budget building process plus the new notes. But I can put new notes in that highlight those changes.
Okay.
It doesn't allow me to turn off and turn on just pieces. It's an all.
I'm more, to try to keep it simple, because it wasn't an overly long process, but could it be a memo in Word with bullet points saying we reduced these lines by 164,000?
Well, I can
know.
do something very similar to the spending plan that we had put forward
Yep.
and do it in a spreadsheet.
Simplified. I don't want you to spend 2 days working it, but I think,
Well, that part's already done, so that won't, I can bring it back to the board on the first.
I just want to make,
Take a look at, sure.
selfishly, I want to make it, for me, sitting on the table, to be able to be as clear as possible. And we have got some new members on there that
Haven't seen this going
haven't seen this
forward.
process before.
I'm gonna bring them a basket of fresh rotten tomatoes and a big pot of coffee, so they're ready for this.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, anything we can do to flag changes that we made, so they can be easily say, okay, these are the areas that we saw
have been
them
addressed.
discussing. And instead of having them to hunt through line by line to say, where were those changes? So if we can denote it, that they can go right to that, and I think that'll save a lot of time for them and questions when we get to at least getting them up to speed.
Okay. So, a cover sheet plus annotations within the lines themselves?
That's what I'd like to see, and just from my records, if you can shoot me a copy so that when we do get to our first meeting, I have it in my folder.
Nothing goes to the budget committee that hasn't come to the board first.
Okay.
And if there are questions that are sent to me by budget committee members, I always CC the chair and the budget committee member
Okay,
when I return those.
good.
Anything else for public?
I think we're good. Yeah. I didn't forget the custodian's contract. I think we're good.
We're working on the rest of the paperwork. Been signing for 20 minutes.
I understand.
So I'll make a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A:3, 2, A, B, and C, nominations and resignations.
Second.
Seconded by Josh. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, everyone, the staff and people at home.